tonight we step back, not just in time but in scent. You stand on a cobblestone street, the year is 1785, and the city of Paris hums around you. But this isn't the Paris of perfumed boutiques and fresh bread that fills your imagination. No, this is a Paris that assaults your nostrils with a symphony of forgotten odors, a medley that would send your modern sensibilities reeling. You probably won't survive this olfactory assault without a strong constitution, and even then, your nose might never be quite the same. The air is thick, not just with dust and the cries of street vendors, but with something far more primal, far more 18th century. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, tell me, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it there? I love to imagine you, tucked away in your own little corner of the world, ready to drift off with tales of a time long past. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in a bustling Parisian street, the kind depicted in engravings, but the reality is far more vivid and, yes, pungent. The morning sun, already warm, begins to coax the full bouquet from the city. Your nose, accustomed to the subtle fragrances of modern life, is immediately overwhelmed. It's a dense, layered aroma, not entirely unpleasant in its individual components, but utterly disorienting in its totality. Imagine the scent of horse manure, not just a whiff, but a constant, underlying presence, warmed by the sun and mingled with the damp earth of unpaved roads. This isn't a fleeting odor. It's a foundational note in the Parisian air. Carriages clatter by, their wheels kicking up not only dust, but also a fine spray of whatever has accumulated on the streets. You instinctively step back, a tiny cloud of pulverized history wafting past your face. You notice the elaborate wigs of the ladies and gentlemen passing by, their powdered coiffures a stark contrast to the grimy realities underfoot. It's almost as if they exist in a separate, elevated scent sphere, a fragrant bubble floating just above the street-level miasma. The human element adds its own distinct contribution. Personal hygiene, as you understand it, is a rather recent invention. Bathing for many is an infrequent affair, sometimes seen as a dangerous activity, believed to open pores to disease. So the natural human scent, unmasked by daily showers and antiperspirants, is a powerful component of the atmospheric cocktail. Think of the musky, earthy scent of bodies that have known only infrequent washing, clothed in fabrics that are rarely laundered. It's not necessarily a bad smell, just different. More raw, more animal. You might catch a whiff of stale sweat, mingled with the faint sweetness of unwashed hair and the lingering odor of last night's meal. It's a smell that speaks of intimate proximity, of bodies living in close quarters without the modern buffers of personal space and frequent sanitization. This is a society that lives cheek by jowl, where privacy as you know it is a luxury few can afford, and where the scent of your neighbor is an unavoidable part of your daily experience. Then there are the trades. Each street, almost each building, emits its own particular essence. The bakeries, yes, offer the inviting aroma of warm bread and yeasty fermentation, a comforting counterpoint to the more challenging smells. But next door, perhaps, is a tannery, where the pungent, acrid smell of curing hides wafts out, a truly industrial stench that clings to the air. The butcher shops, too, contribute their share. The metallic tang of fresh blood mingling with the rich, sometimes slightly off, scent of raw meat. And let's not forget the fishmongers, whose stalls, even in the cooler mornings, release the unmistakable aroma of the sea, often a few days too far from it. It's a patchwork of professional odors, each one telling a story about the city's commerce and daily life. You can almost trace the economic activity of the street with your nose, following the changing smells from one shop to the next. One particularly pervasive smell, often overlooked in romanticized depictions, is that of urine. Public urination is not uncommon, and the lack of proper sewage systems means that human waste often finds its way into open drains, or simply onto the street itself. The porous cobblestones soak up this moisture, releasing it back into the air with the warmth of the sun. It's a sharp, ammoniac smell, especially noticeable in narrow alleys and less frequented passages. This, combined with the omnipresent horse manure, forms a sort of base layer to the city's fragrance profile, a constant reminder of the fundamental realities of urban living before modern sanitation. You might even notice a certain stickiness to the air, a humidity that seems to carry and amplify these earthy, bodily smells. It's a far cry from the sanitized, paved, and perfumed streets you're used to traversing. You might find yourself instinctively holding your breath in certain spots, a futile gesture against an all-encompassing atmosphere. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of perfumes and floral pomanders was genuinely about masking these pervasive odors, or if it was more about social status and fashion. While it certainly helped, the sheer volume of competing smells suggests a losing battle. You see ladies discreetly bringing their perfumed handkerchiefs to their noses, a small, elegant gesture of defense against the overwhelming assault. Gentlemen might carry small containers of smelling salts or floral essences, not just for fainting spells, but as a personal aromatic shield. It's an unspoken agreement that the world smells, and you do your best to mitigate its effects, at least on your person. It's a fascinating dance between the desire for elegance and the undeniable realities of 18th century urban life. And then there's the underlying dampness. Paris, with its proximity to the Seine, often feels humid, and this humidity exacerbates many of the smells. It makes the air heavy, causing odors to linger rather than dissipate. The stone buildings, perpetually slightly cool and damp, seem to absorb and then slowly release the smells of centuries. You might walk past an ancient wall and catch a faint, almost ghostly whiff of something old and musty, a scent that speaks of countless lives lived within its shadow. It's a reminder that this city has breathed for centuries, absorbing the exhalations of its inhabitants, and it holds those memories in its very fabric. The concept of a fresh scent is almost alien. A truly clean smell would be that of rain, perhaps washing the streets clean, or the crisp air of the countryside. But here, in the heart of the city, freshness is a relative term. Even the flowers in market stalls, while beautiful to behold, are quickly subsumed into the dominant olfactory landscape. They add a fleeting top note, a brief moment of sweetness, before the deeper, earthier, and more bodily aromas reassert themselves. It's a powerful reminder that our modern understanding of cleanliness and fragrance is a product of our environment, shaped by advancements that were centuries away in this particular moment. You might even find yourself craving the simple, unadulterated smell of clean water, something you take for granted in your own time. You might wonder about the human tolerance for such a constant barrage of smells. Were they simply immune? Or did they just adapt? The answer, most likely, is a combination of both. Their noses were undoubtedly more accustomed to strong, natural smells, less sensitive to what you might consider offensive. And adaptation is a powerful thing. What is initially overwhelming can, over time, become merely background noise. Imagine living your entire life surrounded by these scents. They would simply be the smell of the city, rather than a collection of individual affronts. It's a testament to human resilience, and perhaps a gentle joke about how much we complain about small discomforts in our own era. "Oh, the Wi-Fi is slow," you might think. While these folks were navigating streets that smelled like a particularly bad day at the farm, even the most fashionable individuals, despite their perfumes and powders, would carry a subtle imprint of the city's pervasive aromas. Their expensive silks and velvets would absorb the air, becoming miniature time capsules of Parisian life. If you could somehow transport one of these elaborately dressed individuals to your own time, the first thing you might notice isn't their clothing or their posture, but the faint, almost imperceptible scent of 18th century Paris clinging to them. It's a ghost of a smell, a whisper of a forgotten reality, but it would be there nonetheless. It's a sensory signature, a unique olfactory fingerprint of an entire era. The idea of ventilation, as we understand it, is also quite primitive. Homes are often tightly sealed against the cold of winter, or to keep out the summer heat, trapping indoor air and its accompanying smells. Cooking odors, the faint scent of charcoal from fires, the aroma of lamp oil, these all mingle with the personal and communal effluvium. Houses often smelled of their inhabitants, and of the lives lived within their walls. There was less distinction between inside and outside air, the two constantly intermingling and exchanging their aromatic properties. It's a reminder that fresh air, too, is a relative concept, and what we consider stale or stuff would have been simply the norm. Consider the simple act of laundry. Washing clothes is a laborious, time-consuming task often done infrequently, and with harsher soaps than we use today. This means that clothes retain more of the environment's smells, and the wash itself might not fully remove all odors. Linens, while often bleached in the sun, would still carry a faint memory of their previous life, a subtle underlying note of the city. It's a fascinating thought that even the clean laundry of the era would have a distinctly different smell than what you're used to, a sort of historical olfactory ghost. It's enough to make you appreciate your washing machine and scented detergent, isn't it? So as you drift deeper into this historical reverie, allow your mind to expand beyond the visual. Imagine the subtle, constant tickle in your nostrils, the way your brain might learn to filter out the most aggressive smells, focusing instead on fleeting, pleasant ones. The faint scent of a rose from a passing bouquet, the enticing aroma of a freshly baked pastry. These would be momentary oases in a desert of stronger, more fundamental odors. It's a reminder that our senses are constantly adapting, constantly interpreting the world around us, and that what seems unbearable to us now was simply life for those in 18th century France. And with that thought, let your breathing deepen, slow and steady. The smells of the past begin to fade, replaced by the gentle hum of your fan, the soft darkness of your room. You are safe in your own time, your own comfortable space, carrying only the faintest echo of a world that smelled very, very different. Let the images and the curious sensations lull you into a peaceful slumber. As you settle deeper into the cushions of your mind, the scents of Paris begin to soften, almost as if the city itself is holding its breath for your journey. We leave the immediate street level, where the earthy realities of urban life pressed in, and drift upwards, into the grander homes and the lives of the aristocracy. Even here, behind the imposing facades of hôtels particuliers and chateaux, the olfactory world is distinctly different from your own. While the raw sewage and manure might be less direct, other, more refined, yet still unfamiliar, odors permeate the air. You might expect a heaven of pristine freshness, but think again. Your modern nose, used to air fresheners and daily changes of clothes, would still find plenty to contemplate, and perhaps gently recoil from. It's a subtle shift, from the robust farmyard to the slightly faded potpourri, but a shift nonetheless. One mainstream historical fact you might find surprising is how relatively few private bathrooms existed even in the most opulent homes. The idea of a dedicated, plumbed space for personal hygiene was still a developing concept. Consider the pervasive use of perfumes, not just as a fashion statement, but as a practical necessity. Ladies and gentlemen would apply generous amounts of floral and musk-based fragrances. These weren't the light, airy spritzes you might use today. They were dense, concentrated essences designed to cling to clothing and skin, creating a personal cloud of scent. You might catch the rich, sweet aroma of jasmine or tuberose, mingled with the heavier, animalistic notes of civet or musk. These ingredients, while exotic and costly, could also be quite overpowering in large quantities. Imagine walking into a salon, and instead of a subtle hint of fragrance, you are met with a concentrated blast of a dozen different perfumes, all competing for dominance. It's a dizzying, sometimes cloying experience, a testament to the belief that more was simply more when it came to personal fragrance. One quirky tidbit is that some fashionable ladies would even sew small bags of aromatic herbs into their elaborate hairstyles to combat any lingering scalp odors from infrequent washing. The very fabrics of their clothing contribute to the sensory tapestry. Silks, velvets, and wools, though beautiful, were not easily washable. Dresses and coats would be aired out, brushed, and spot cleaned, but rarely subjected to a full laundering. This means that over time, the fabric would absorb the scents of the environment, residual perfume, faint traces of body odor, the smoky aroma from fireplaces, and even the smell of food from lavish dinners. You might lean in to admire the intricate embroidery on a lady's gown and catch a faint whiff of something that speaks of many wears and less frequent washes, a subtle mustiness that hints at the fabric's long history. It's not necessarily unpleasant, but it's a far cry from the crisp, freshly laundered scent you associate with clean clothing. And speaking of food, the kitchens in these grand homes, even when tucked away, contribute their share of aromas. Roasting meats, simmering stews, and baking pastries would fill the air with rich, savory scents. But without modern ventilation systems, these cooking odors would often permeate the entire house, clinging to curtains, tapestries, and furniture. You might walk through a grand hall, far from the kitchen, and still catch a faint, lingering aroma of yesterday's roast, or the sweet, buttery scent of a long-finished dessert. It's a constant, background note of domesticity, always present, always gently reminding you of the recent culinary activities. It's a smell that says, someone is always feasting here, and not always in a good way. Sometimes it smells a little too much like stale grease. Then there's the challenge of chamber pots. Despite the grandeur of the homes, indoor plumbing for toilets was still rudimentary or non-existent for the vast majority. Chamber pots were used and emptied, but not always immediately, and certainly not always perfectly. The lingering odor of urine and waste, even in small amounts, would inevitably permeate the air, particularly in bedrooms and dressing rooms. You might notice a faint, almost imperceptible tang, a reminder of the practical realities of human waste management in an age without flush toilets. It's a discreet smell, rarely overwhelming, but a constant presence that underscores the difference in sanitary norms. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of strong perfumes was solely to mask these odors, or if it was more deeply tied to evolving concepts of luxury and social display. Perhaps it was a clever blend of both, a fragrant fig leaf over a less than fragrant reality. Fireplaces, essential for warmth, also contribute their unique scent. The smoky aroma of burning wood, sometimes mingled with the richer smell of coal, would permeate the air, clinging to every surface. You might walk into a lavish drawing room and immediately be struck by the comforting, yet pervasive, scent of wood smoke, a constant reminder of the warmth and light that hearths provided. It's a primal, earthy smell, one that speaks of comfort and gathering, but also of a certain lack of pristine freshness. It's a smell that feels ancient, almost timeless, connecting you to the very act of homemaking in an earlier era. The smell of a cozy night in, you might think. If a cozy night in involved smelling like a campfire for weeks, even the fresh flowers, brought in to adorn the grand rooms, would contribute to the complex symphony of scents. Their delicate fragrance, while beautiful, would mingle with the stronger, more fundamental odors of the house, creating a layered, evolving aroma. A vase of roses might offer a sweet, fleeting top note, but the deeper, more persistent sense of stale air, unwashed fabrics, and lingering human presence would remain beneath. It's a delightful tension between the artificial beauty of the cut flowers and the raw reality of the living space. A reminder that even in luxury, nature finds a way to assert its presence. One light joke here is that they probably had to change the flowers more often than they changed their shirts. The very air quality inside these homes was also different. Without modern filtration and ventilation, dust, fine particles from fireplaces, and even microscopic detritus from daily life would hang in the air, contributing to a certain heaviness that you wouldn't find in a modern, air-purified environment. You might feel a subtle tickle in your throat, a slight dryness that speaks of air that hasn't been cycled or cleaned in the way you're used to. It's a subtle sensory detail, but one that adds to the overall experience of being truly there, truly immersed in the past. It's a gentle reminder that even the air itself was different, carrying the subtle signatures of an earlier time. Think too of the animals. Dogs, often pampered companions, would wander freely through these grand homes, adding their own distinct canine aroma. Cats, if present, would contribute their more subtle, but still noticeable, presence. And of course the stables, even if a distance away, would occasionally send faint wafts of hay and horse into the air, particularly on breezy days. These animal scents, natural and earthy, would intermingle with the human and domestic smells, creating a rich tapestry of life within the walls. It's a reminder that these homes were not just human habitations, but vibrant, living ecosystems, teeming with all sorts of creatures. At least they didn't have to worry about pet dander allergies. You might muse, because everything was dander. The materials of the house itself also contribute. Old wood paneling, ancient tapestries, and centuries-old plaster would all absorb and release the sense of time. There's a particular smell to old buildings, a dry, musty, comforting aroma that speaks of age and history. It's a smell that whispers stories, a subtle atmospheric detail that adds to the sense of stepping into another era. This is a smell that transcends the daily odors of human life. It's the very scent of history, of permanence, of something that has stood through countless generations. It's a smell that invites you to breathe deeply and imagine the whispers of the past echoing through the ancient halls. Even the candles and oil lamps used for illumination would contribute their smoky, waxy scent to the air. The faint, sweet aroma of beeswax or the slightly more acrid smell of animal fat from tallow candles would be a constant background note, particularly in the evenings. These aren't just sources of light. They are sources of scent, subtly perfuming the air with the very essence of evening illumination. It's a gentle, reassuring smell, one that speaks of gathering around a flickering flame, of stories told in the shadows. It's a reminder that even the act of seeing was tied to a distinct sensory experience. Another light joke to consider: imagine trying to read a book by that light. You'd need a good nose to find the page. So, as you continue your journey, your mind now attuned to the nuanced symphony of historical scents, you begin to appreciate the layers that make up the olfactory landscape of 18th century France. It's not just about what smells bad or good, but what smells different, what speaks of a world operating under entirely different sensory parameters. You're learning to smell history, to discern the subtle atmospheric signatures of a bygone era. And as these complex aromas gently fade, allowing your mind to rest, you feel the familiar pull towards a deeper tranquility, a comfortable silence as you prepare to drift further into the past. Let these curious smells become part of your dreaming, weaving themselves into a soft, historical haze. You now glide further into the fascinating, albeit often odoriferous, world of 18th century France, leaving the grand salons and their layered perfumes behind. Our focus shifts to the fascinating, and sometimes stomach-turning, aspects of food and drink, and how they contributed to the overall sensory experience of the era. The culinary landscape of this period was vastly different from your own, not just in terms of ingredients and cooking methods, but in how these elements interacted with the human body and the surrounding environment, creating a unique set of smells both within and outside the dining room. You might be accustomed to the crisp, clean scents of a modern kitchen, but prepare for something far more earthy, more primal, and certainly more fermented. Consider, for instance, the widespread consumption of wine, often of varying quality, and its impact on the general atmosphere. Wine, especially when consumed in large quantities and without modern refrigeration, could develop a distinct, sometimes vinegary, aroma. This scent would cling to breath, to clothing, and subtly permeate the air in taverns and dining halls. You might catch the rich, fruity notes of a good vintage, but equally the sharper, more acidic tang of a lesser quality wine, or even one that has turned slightly. It's a constant, underlying alcoholic note, woven into the fabric of daily life, particularly in the evening. One mainstream historical fact is that water quality was often poor, making wine or beer a safer, and therefore more common, daily beverage for all social classes. Then there's the meat. Before refrigeration, preservation methods were rudimentary. Salting, smoking, and drying were common, each imparting its own unique aroma to the meat itself, and to the places where it was prepared and stored. Imagine the smell of salted pork, cured hams, or smoked fish, powerful, assertive aromas that speak of necessity rather than gourmet choice. Even fresh meat, particularly in warmer months, would have a more pronounced, often gamey, scent than what you are used to. Butcher shops, as mentioned, contributed their share, but so too did the kitchen, where the preparation of these meats would release their full aromatic potential, clinging to the air and the cooks themselves. It's a smell that tells a story of survival, of making the most of what was available. Cheese, too, plays a significant olfactory role. France, even then, was a nation of cheeses, and many varieties were, by modern standards, incredibly pungent. Strong unpasteurized cheeses, often aged in less than sterile conditions, would emit powerful, often ammoniac odors. Imagine walking into a cheese shop or a pantry and being hit by a wave of these intense aromas, a medley of earthy, musky, and sometimes frankly challenging scents. These weren't subtle background notes. They were bold, assertive declarations of dairy fermentation. One quirky or fringe tidbit is that some extremely strong cheeses were believed to have medicinal properties, or were even used as a form of smelling salts to revive fainting ladies. Garlic and onions, staples of French cuisine, would contribute their strong, unmistakable aromas to almost every savory dish. When cooked, their pungency would soften, becoming rich and savory, but their lingering presence on the breath and in the kitchen air would be undeniable. You might notice the persistent scent of cooked onion following someone long after their meal, a testament to its prevalence in the diet. These are comfort smells, the foundation of many a hearty meal, but also smells that announce themselves unapologetically to anyone within smelling distance. Excuse me, did someone just finish a meal from 3 days ago? You might jokingly wonder. The general lack of immediate waste disposal also contributed to the ambient food smells. Scraps and refuse, particularly in less affluent areas, would often be simply discarded onto the streets or left in communal piles, attracting flies and putrefying in the sun. The resulting stench of decaying organic matter, mixed with the general street miasma, would be a constant, unpleasant presence. This isn't just about food waste. It's about the very concept of waste management being in its infancy. It's a smell that screams of inconvenience, of a daily battle against the accumulation of refuse. Even the way food was eaten would contribute. Without forks being universally adopted, many people ate with their hands or with spoons and knives, which could lead to more direct contact with food, and therefore more lingering smells on the skin. Imagine the faint scent of a rich stew clinging to your fingers long after the meal, or the sweet stickiness of a fruit tart. It's a more intimate, more tactile relationship with food, one that leaves a lasting sensory impression beyond just the taste buds. Historians still argue whether the elaborate table manners developed partly to mitigate the less refined aspects of eating in a pre-hygiene era, or if it was purely a social construct. Perhaps a bit of both. The consumption of root vegetables and pulses, common and hearty staples, also contributed to distinct bodily odors. Diets rich in cabbage, beans and other fibrous foods are known to produce certain effluences, which, in a society with less ventilation and less frequent bathing, would become part of the ambient human scent. It's a gentle reminder that what we eat has a direct impact on how we smell, and in the 18th century, those impacts were far less buffered by modern conveniences. The fragrant symphony of a peasant's diet, you might quip. Truly a concerto for the nose. Bakeries, while offering delightful aromas of freshly baked bread, also had a subtle, underlying scent of yeast and flour that permeated their surroundings. It's a comforting, wholesome smell, but also a persistent one, clinging to the clothes of bakers and wafting down entire streets. It's the smell of sustenance, of warmth, of the fundamental joy of breaking bread. But it's also a smell that tells you exactly what kind of establishment you're passing by, leaving little to the imagination. The practice of smoking, particularly pipe tobacco, was widespread among both men and women, adding another distinct layer to the olfactory landscape. The sweet, pungent aroma of burning tobacco sometimes mingled with the richer, more exotic scents of imported blends would fill public spaces, drawing rooms, and even bedrooms. It's a smell that speaks of leisure, of contemplation, of social gatherings. But it's also a powerful, pervasive aroma that clings to curtains, furniture, and clothing, a constant reminder of the presence of smokers. It's a smell that, for many of us today, evokes a certain nostalgia for a bygone era, even if it might have been overwhelming at the time. Even the sweet treats and desserts, often made with sugar, fruit, and spices, would have a less refined, more natural sweetness than many modern confections. The aroma of baked apples, spiced custards, or simple fruit tarts would add a delightful counterpoint to the more savory and earthy smells. These are the smells of indulgence, of celebration, of the simple pleasures that punctuated daily life. They are fleeting moments of pure delight for the nose, little islands of sweetness in a sea of more complex, sometimes challenging aromas. So, as the curtain falls on this exploration of 18th century food and its sensory impact, you're left with a richer, more nuanced understanding of how people experienced the world through their noses. It wasn't just about individual smells, but about the intricate interplay of all these elements, creating a unique and unforgettable aromatic signature for the era. The constant presence of certain food-related smells, both pleasant and less so, would have been an undeniable part of daily life, shaping perceptions and experiences in ways we can only begin to imagine. And with that, as the last faint aroma of a long-ago meal fades from your mind, allow yourself to sink deeper into the comfort of your bed, feeling the peaceful weight of historical knowledge gently settling over you, easing you into a deep, dreamless sleep. Let the lingering scents be sweet dreams, as the culinary echoes of 18th century France begin to soften. We now transition to a more intimate and perhaps, for your modern sensibilities, a more challenging aspect of daily life: personal hygiene, or rather, the distinct lack thereof by today's standards. Forget your morning shower, your scented soaps, and your freshly laundered clothes. In this era, personal cleansing was a ritual far removed from our current practices, and the resulting human aromas formed a fundamental layer of the 18th century sensory experience. You're about to discover why everyone smelled so unique. The most striking difference, of course, is bathing. For many, a full bath was a rare event, perhaps once a month, or even less frequently, particularly in winter. The reasons were varied. The sheer labor involved in heating and transporting water, the belief that hot water opened pores to disease, and a general cultural acceptance of certain bodily odors. So, the natural human scent, unmasked by daily washing, was a powerful, ever-present reality. Imagine the subtle, yet pervasive, aroma of unwashed skin, mingling with the natural oils and the faint residue of sweat. It's not necessarily a foul smell, but a deep, musky, intensely human one, a raw and unadulterated essence of the body. One mainstream historical fact is that dry cleaning and brushing of clothes, along with liberal application of perfume, were far more common hygiene practices than full-body immersion in water. Hair, both on the head and body, also played a significant role. Hair washing was infrequent, and the elaborate powdered wigs so popular among the aristocracy were often not cleaned for extended periods. Imagine the delicate, yet persistent, scent of stale pomade mingled with natural hair oils and accumulated dust. Wigs, often made from human or animal hair, could harbor their own distinct aromas, a subtle blend of the wearer's own scent. The substances used to style them, and the ambient smells of the environment. Sometimes, these wigs were even home to small creatures, adding another layer of complexity to the olfactory profile, though we won't dwell on that too much for sleep's sake. Then there's the issue of oral hygiene. Toothbrushes and toothpaste, as you know them, were far from common. People might use rough cloths or various powders to clean their teeth, but the efficacy was limited. This meant that bad breath, or halitosis, was likely far more prevalent than it is today. Imagine conversations punctuated by the faint, sometimes not so faint, whiff of unbrushed teeth and the residue of recent meals. It's a very intimate smell, one that speaks of close proximity and a different standard of personal freshness. One quirky tidbit is that some wealthier individuals would chew on fragrant herbs or spices like cloves to freshen their breath, a natural form of mouthwash. Clothing, as previously discussed, was not laundered with the frequency or thoroughness of modern garments. Undergarments, while perhaps changed more often, would still absorb bodily odors, and outer garments, worn for days or even weeks without a full wash, would become saturated with the wearer's scent, as well as the ambient smells of their surroundings. Imagine the accumulated essence of sweat, perfume, fireplace smoke, and general city air, all absorbed into layers of silk, wool, and linen. It's a textile memory, a soft but persistent aromatic record of the wearer's daily life. What a charming bouquet of human and environmental essences you're wearing today, you might joke. Even footwear contributed. Leather shoes, especially those worn for long periods and exposed to the elements, could develop distinct, sometimes unpleasant odors. Without modern socks or regular foot washing, the scent of feet trapped in leather would be another subtle but undeniable part of the personal aromatic profile. It's a very grounded smell, one that connects the individual directly to the dusty, often damp, streets they traversed. The very air within homes, as touched upon earlier, would be infused with the personal sense of the inhabitants. Without robust ventilation, these human aromas would linger, subtly perfuming every room. Bedrooms, in particular, would retain the concentrated essence of those who slept there, a blend of personal scent, residual perfume, and the faint, musty aroma of bedding that was aired rather than frequently washed. It's a very personal, intimate smell, one that speaks of the close quarters and communal nature of living in this era. The use of perfumes, therefore, takes on a new significance. They were not merely accessories. They were essential tools in managing the olfactory environment. But even the most potent perfumes could only partially mask the underlying natural scents. Instead, they created a complex, layered aroma, a blend of the human and the artificial. It's a fascinating dance between nature and artifice, a constant negotiation between what the body produced and what society deemed acceptable. Historians still debate whether the fashion for heavy perfumes was a direct response to poor hygiene, or if it was more deeply rooted in the evolving aesthetic sensibilities of the time, perhaps a bit of both. Another aspect is the relative lack of privacy. People lived in much closer proximity, often sharing rooms, and personal space was a luxury. This constant closeness meant that personal aromas were far more readily shared and experienced. There was less opportunity for the dissipation of individual smells, leading to a more communally centered environment. It's a reminder that even the air we breathe can be a reflection of social structures and living conditions. Yes, darling, I know what you had for dinner last night, and what you haven't had in the bath. You might imagine someone playfully remarking. The very concept of a clean smell was likely different. It wouldn't have been the sterile, almost scentless freshness you associate with modern detergents and disinfectants. Instead, clean might have meant the smell of sun-dried linens, or the faint scent of lye soap, or simply the absence of overtly putrid odors. It was a more natural, less chemically engineered form of freshness, one that allowed for a greater range of natural human and environmental smells to remain. It's a fascinating recalibration of what constitutes cleanliness for your senses. Even the simple act of sleep would contribute. Night sweats, the oils from skin and hair, these would all infuse bedding and sleeping garments with personal scents. Beds, therefore, would hold the accumulated essence of those who slept in them, a comforting, familiar smell for the inhabitants, but perhaps a surprising one for an outsider from your time. It's a very intimate aroma, one that speaks of rest, vulnerability, and the most private moments of daily life. So, as you slowly emerge from this deep dive into the personal aromatic world of 18th century France, you gain a profound appreciation for the invisible, yet ever-present dimension of scent. It was a world where human presence was announced not just visually and audibly, but powerfully through the nose. The smells of unwashed bodies, perfumed hair, and rarely laundered clothes were not anomalies. They were simply the fabric of daily life. And as these curious, human aromas gently recede, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let your own clean sheets and fresh air guide you into a restful, dream-filled night. As the lingering personal scents of 18th century France gently fade from your mind, we now shift our gaze, and our noses, to the public spaces and social gatherings that defined the era. Moving beyond individual bodies and private homes, we enter a realm where the collective aromas of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of people converged, creating an unprecedented olfactory experience. Imagine the grand ballrooms, the bustling marketplaces, the crowded theaters, each with its own unique, overwhelming symphony of smells. You're about to discover how these public environments intensified and layered the human and environmental essences into something truly extraordinary. Let's begin with the grand public spectacles, like a ball at Versailles or a performance at the Opéra. Here, the sheer concentration of people, all in their finest, often unwashed, garments, created a dense cloud of human emanation. The heavy perfumes and pomades, while lavishly applied, would mingle with the musky scent of warm bodies, the faint metallic tang of sweat, and the underlying aroma of powdered wigs. The air, thick with this human perfume cocktail, would be further enriched by the flickering beeswax candles and oil lamps, adding a sweet, smoky layer. You might feel a pleasant warmth from the crowd, but your nose would be working overtime to process the rich, complex, and sometimes cloying atmosphere. One mainstream historical fact is that these large gatherings were often quite warm, even stifling, due to the number of people and lack of modern climate control, exacerbating the spread of odors. The marketplaces, on the other hand, presented a very different, yet equally potent sensory experience. Here, the earthy aromas of the street combined with the sharp, distinct smells of commerce. Imagine the scent of fresh produce, mingled with the less pleasant odor of decaying vegetables and discarded scraps. The rich, gamey smell of live animals and freshly butchered meat would blend with the acrid tang of fish and the sweet, yeasty aroma of bread. Add to this the constant movement of people, the dust kicked up by their shoes, and the underlying presence of horse manure, and you have a vibrant, chaotic and intensely aromatic environment. It's a smell that speaks of raw commerce, of the fundamental exchange of goods, and of life lived in the open air, unbuffered by modern sanitization. Step right up, folks! Get your fresh produce and a free, full sensory experience! You might jokingly hear a vendor call. Churches and cathedrals, while often perceived as solemn and sacred spaces, also had their distinct olfactory character. The cool, damp stone walls would retain the musty scent of age, mingled with the lingering aroma of incense from religious ceremonies. Add to this the accumulated scent of hundreds of congregants, particularly during long services, the subtle human musk, the faint scent of wool and linen, and the occasional whiff of extinguished candles. It's a more subdued, perhaps more spiritual blend of aromas, but still undeniably present. You might feel a sense of reverence, but your nose would also register the ancient, almost timeless, presence of human devotion. The ubiquitous presence of animals in public spaces further amplified the olfactory environment. Horses, essential for transportation, contributed their powerful earthy manure smell, which permeated the cobblestones and lingered in the air. Dogs, cats, and even livestock, particularly in the outer markets, added their own distinct animal essences. These animal odors were not considered out of place. They were simply part of the natural background noise of the city, a constant reminder of the intertwined lives of humans and beasts. It's a smell that grounds you in the realities of pre-automobile life, where animal power was the engine of urban existence. One quirky or fringe tidbit is that fashionable ladies sometimes carried small, perfumed sachets hidden in their muffs or pockets to discreetly combat particularly strong public odors. Even the concept of fresh air in public spaces was relative. Without modern standards of air quality, the outdoor air was far from pristine. It was constantly infused with the emanations of human and animal activity, industrial processes, and natural decomposition. The wind might carry the scent of the river or distant fields, but it would also carry the concentrated essence of the city itself, a living, breathing, and undeniably smelling entity. You might feel a breeze, but it would be a breeze laden with the full history of the air it had traversed. The very infrastructure contributed. Open drains, overflowing cesspits in less regulated areas, and the general lack of enclosed sewage systems meant that the acrid tang of human waste was never far away, particularly in less affluent neighborhoods or crowded thoroughfares. This wasn't just a fleeting smell, it was a persistent, underlying current in the urban atmospheric river. It's a smell that speaks of a different understanding of public health and sanitation, one that allowed for far greater tolerance of odors that would be considered utterly unacceptable today. Historians still argue whether the widespread diseases of the era were primarily due to poor water quality or the airborne spread of miasma from these putrid environments. It was likely a devastating combination of both. The public baths, while available, were not universally utilized with the frequency you might expect, and their own cleanliness standards varied wildly. Sometimes they were seen as places for socializing as much as for bathing, and their water, reused throughout the day, could quickly become murky and less than fresh. The combined smell of warm, slightly dirty water, human bodies, and lingering soaps would create a distinct, humid, and somewhat earthy atmosphere. It's a smell that represents an attempt at public hygiene, but one still very much rooted in the limitations of the era. Even the celebratory events, like parades or festivals, would have their own distinct olfactory flair. The smells of gunpowder from salutes, the sweet stickiness of spilled wine or beer, the aroma of roasting meats from street vendors, and the excited, concentrated scent of a festive crowd all would combine to create a sensory explosion. It's a smell of joy, of collective experience, but also of a temporary chaos that heightens all the senses, including the nose. Now that's a party, you might think, one you can smell a mile away. So, as you slowly withdraw from the bustling, sensory-rich public spaces of 18th century France, you're left with a powerful impression of a world that experienced smell in a far more intense and integrated way. Every public gathering, every street corner, every social interaction was layered with an intricate tapestry of odors, reflecting the unfiltered realities of life in that era. It was a world that made no apologies for its smells, where the nose was a constant, active participant in the perception of reality. And as these vibrant, sometimes overwhelming, public aromas gently dissipate, allowing your mind to rest, you feel the comfortable silence of your own space settling around you, easing you into a deep, peaceful sleep. Let the lingering echoes of a richly scented past lull you into sweet dreams. With the bustling public spaces and their myriad aromas now receding into the background, we venture deeper into the more specific, yet equally pervasive, smells of the 18th century French urban landscape. Our focus now turns to industry, crafts, and the unavoidable realities of waste management, which collectively contributed their own powerful and often challenging notes to the city's overall olfactory symphony. Prepare your nose for the raw, unadulterated sense of labor and the often unpleasant byproducts of a pre-industrial, yet highly active society. First, let's consider the tanneries. These vital establishments, necessary for producing leather goods from shoes to books, were undoubtedly among the most pungent industries. The process of curing animal hides involved soaking them in solutions of animal waste, lime, and often urine, leading to an incredibly acrid ammoniac and putrid stench. Imagine this smell not just as a fleeting whiff, but as a constant, heavy presence in entire districts dedicated to tanning. The odor would cling to the workers, permeate the very ground, and drift on the slightest breeze, announcing the proximity of a tannery long before you saw it. One mainstream historical fact is that tanneries were usually relegated to the outskirts of cities or downwind due to their overwhelming odors, though their presence was still palpable. Next, the slaughterhouses. Before the advent of modern meatpacking facilities, animals were often butchered directly within or very close to urban centers. The smell of fresh blood, offal, and animal viscera would be a powerful, metallic and undeniably raw aroma. This, combined with the presence of live animals awaiting their fate, created a visceral, potent olfactory experience. The ground itself would often be stained, and the air thick with the combined sense of life and death, of sustenance and sacrifice. It's a smell that speaks of a direct, unapologetic relationship with the food chain, far removed from the sterile packaging of modern supermarkets. Don't worry, honey, dinner is just around the corner, literally. You might imagine a parent explaining to their child. The pervasive presence of human and animal waste cannot be overstated. With rudimentary sanitation systems, human waste from chamber pots was often emptied directly into streets, gardens, or communal cesspits. Horse manure, from the thousands of horses essential for transport, accumulated rapidly on the cobblestones. Rain would wash some away, but much would simply dry, be ground into dust, or slowly decompose, releasing powerful odors of ammonia, decay, and damp earth. Imagine the complex layers of these smells, clinging to the ground and permeating the very air you breathed, particularly in the warmer months. It's a smell that underscores the constant battle against filth in a pre-sewage era. Consider the various crafts that used strong-smelling materials. Hat makers, for instance, often used mercury in the felting process, which, while not a pleasant scent, would contribute a subtle, unusual chemical note to their workshops. Dyers using a variety of natural and chemical dyes would fill the air with the strong, often pungent, odors of their trade. Potters, while perhaps less odorous in their main work, would still contribute the earthy scent of wet clay, mingled with the smoke from kilns. Each specialized artisan district had its own unique aromatic signature, a blend of raw materials, processes, and the lingering presence of human labor. The absence of modern trash collection meant that general refuse and decaying organic matter were common sights and smells. Food scraps, discarded packaging if any, and general household waste would accumulate in piles, sometimes informally, sometimes formally, but always contributing to the ambient stench of decomposition. The smell of rotting vegetables, fermenting fruits, and general putrefaction would be a constant, unpleasant reminder of the inefficiencies of waste management. It's a smell that speaks of a different understanding of public cleanliness, where the streets were simply an extension of the household disposal system. Historians still argue whether the perceived tolerance for these smells was true adaptation or simply a coping mechanism for an inescapable reality. It was likely a blend, a necessary mental adjustment to constant olfactory assault. Even the more benign industries contributed. The faint, sweet smell of sawdust and freshly cut wood from carpenters' workshops, the metallic tang from blacksmiths' forges, mingled with the acrid scent of coal smoke. These were the smells of industry, of progress, of the daily creation of goods necessary for life. While not as offensive as the tanneries, they were powerful, assertive smells that defined certain areas and added to the city's complex aromatic profile. You might joke that you could navigate the city blindfolded just by following your nose to the nearest trade. The communal well or fountain, while a source of fresh water, would also gather the smells of the surrounding area, particularly if it was in a heavily trafficked public space. The damp stone, the occasional splash of street water, and the lingering smells of those who gathered there would all contribute to a subtle, yet present aroma. It's a smell that speaks of gathering, of necessity, of the fundamental human need for water in a communal setting. The very air itself in industrial districts would be thicker, heavier, laden with the particulate matter and gaseous emissions from various processes. Without pollution controls, the smoke, dust, and fumes from workshops and factories would hang in the air, creating a palpable and often unpleasant atmospheric density. It's a subtle sensory detail that speaks of the very air being different, a constant reminder of the human impact on the environment, even in a pre-industrial revolution sense. So, as you slowly withdraw from the industrious, sometimes pungent, landscapes of 18th century France, you're left with a profound sense of how integral smell was to the understanding of the city's economic and social fabric. Every trade, every necessary function, left its own distinct aromatic mark, weaving together a complex tapestry of smells that defined the urban experience. It was a world where industry wasn't hidden away, but openly announced its presence through the powerful language of scent. And as these raw, earthy, and sometimes challenging aromas gently fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the knowledge of a powerfully scented past lull you into a deep, dreamless sleep. With the raw sense of 18th century French industry and waste receding, we now turn our attention to the more subtle, yet equally pervasive, smells of healthcare medicine and the grim realities of disease and death. In an era without modern antiseptics, anesthesia, or a clear understanding of germ theory, the world of healing and sickness carried its own distinct and often powerful olfactory signature. Prepare your senses for the aromas of medicinal concoctions, lingering illness, and the stark, unforgettable scent of mortality. Imagine entering a sick room, even in a wealthy home. The air would be heavy, a complex blend of stale bodily fluids, unwashed linens, and the sweet, cloying smell of decay and severe illness. There would also be the sharp, medicinal tang of herbal remedies, poultices, and perhaps the faint, acrid scent of burning vinegar, believed to purify the air. The combined effect would be a powerful, almost suffocating, aroma of sickness, a constant reminder of the vulnerability of life. One mainstream historical fact is that miasma theory, the belief that diseases were caused by bad air or foul odors, was widely accepted, leading to practices like burning aromatic herbs or vinegar in sick rooms. The apothecaries and pharmacies of the era would have their own unique, complex aroma. Imagine the sharp, stimulating scent of various herbs and spices, ground cinchona bark for fever, pungent valerian for nerves, or the sweet, earthy aroma of dried roots. These would mingle with the distinct, sometimes unpleasant, smell of various tinctures, elixirs, and distilled compounds, often with an alcoholic base. The air would be thick with these medicinal essences, a testament to the era's reliance on botanical remedies and chemical concoctions. It's a smell that promises healing, but also hints at the often harsh realities of early medicine. One quirky tidbit is that some apothecaries would also sell exotic spices and candies, so their shops might have had a surprisingly varied scent profile, a mix of the therapeutic and the tantalizing. Hospitals, particularly those for the poor, would be places of overwhelming sensory overload. The sheer concentration of sick and dying individuals, often in crowded conditions, would amplify the smells of illness, unwashed bodies, and poor sanitation. The air would be thick with the desperate tang of infection, the sweet, sickly odor of gangrene, and the pervasive smell of unemptied chamber pots. Added to this would be the sharp, metallic scent of blood from surgical procedures, performed without much understanding of hygiene. It's a stark, brutal sensory environment, one that speaks of immense suffering and the limits of medical knowledge. You might instinctively want to hold your breath, but the smell would still find a way in. The practice of bloodletting, a common medical procedure, would contribute the distinct, metallic smell of fresh blood to the sick room or surgical environment. Even a small amount of blood has a powerful, visceral aroma that is instantly recognizable. This, combined with the often unhygienic conditions, would create a potent and sometimes disturbing olfactory backdrop to the act of healing. It's a smell that speaks of desperation, of a belief in procedures that, to your modern mind, seem counterintuitive and dangerous. Then there's the subtle, yet deeply unsettling, smell of death. In the immediate aftermath, there is the faint, sweet smell of decomposition, often mingled with the specific aromas of the illness that preceded it. Later, in the mortuary or a temporary resting place, the smell would become more pronounced, a powerful, pervasive odor that announces the cessation of life. This is not a smell one forgets, and in an era where death was a more common and public occurrence, it would have been a more familiar, albeit always somber, presence. It's a smell that forces you to confront the fragility of existence, a raw and undeniable truth. Historians still argue whether the cultural emphasis on mourning rituals and elaborate funeral practices was partly a way to manage the sensory realities of death, providing a structured way to cope with its pervasive physical presence. Even the graveyards, particularly older, crowded ones, contributed their own unique aroma. The scent of damp earth, decaying wood from coffins, and the slow, inevitable process of human decomposition would create a heavy, earthy, and sometimes faintly sweet smell. It's a smell that speaks of permanence, of rest, of the earth reclaiming its own. You might find it peaceful or simply somber, but it is undeniably a smell of the finality of human experience. Well, that's one way to achieve a deep connection with your ancestors. You might wryly note, the use of specific poultices and compresses for wounds would also add to the sensory profile. Herbal pastes, often made with strong-smelling ingredients, would be applied, contributing their pungent, sometimes sour, aroma to the wound itself and the surrounding air. These are the smells of direct intervention, of an attempt to heal with the limited tools available, often with a raw, earthy immediacy. It's a smell that speaks of hands-on care, of a more direct, less sanitized approach to physical ailments, the scent of specific diseases. While difficult to pinpoint without direct experience, would have been discernible to those who constantly worked with the sick. Certain infections, fevers, and conditions are known to produce distinct bodily odors, which in an era of close contact would have been recognized by physicians and caregivers. This recognition, though based on empirical observation rather than scientific understanding, was a crucial part of diagnosis. It's a fascinating thought that the very air around a sick person could convey information about their ailment, a silent language of suffering. So, as you gently retreat from the somber, yet profoundly human, world of 18th century French healthcare and mortality, you're left with a deeper understanding of the raw, visceral, and often challenging sensory landscape of illness and death. It was a world where healing was an arduous, often uncertain, process, and where the fragility of life was powerfully announced through the nose. And as these stark, sometimes unsettling, aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the quiet understanding of a different kind of human experience guide you into a restful, dreamless sleep. As the somber echoes of 18th century French medicine and mortality softly recede, we now turn our attention to the surprisingly complex and often hidden world of personal effects and common household items. Beyond the grand gestures of fashion and the practicalities of daily life, there existed a myriad of smaller objects, each carrying its own distinct aroma, silently contributing to the overall scent profile of an 18th century home. You are about to discover how everything from your writing desk to your candle holder held a subtle, lingering scent, creating an intimate tapestry of smells that defined domestic life. Consider, for instance, the scent of wood. Most furniture, from grand wardrobes to humble chairs, was made of wood, often unsealed or simply waxed. This meant that the natural aroma of timber, be it oak, pine, or walnut, would be a constant underlying presence. Over time, this wood would absorb the ambient smells of the house fireplace smoke, cooking odors, and human presence, leading to a complex, comforting, and sometimes slightly musty aroma that was uniquely characteristic of an old, well-loved home. Imagine the subtle, earthy scent of ancient wood, telling silent stories of generations lived within its embrace. One mainstream historical fact is that fine furniture was often polished with beeswax, which would add a faint, sweet, and comforting aroma to the room. Books, too, had a very specific scent. Made from rag paper and bound with leather, they would carry the distinct, slightly sweet and sour aroma of decaying organic materials, mingled with the earthy scent of paper and the rich, animalistic aroma of leather. Add to this the subtle scent of printing ink, and perhaps the faint, lingering smell of the hands that held them, and you have a unique and comforting fragrance for any bibliophile. Imagine leaning over an old tome and breathing in the accumulated wisdom and history, all expressed through a single, evocative aroma. Ah, the smell of knowledge, you might muse, or perhaps just a really old book. Then there are the textiles beyond clothing, tapestries, curtains, and upholstery, rarely cleaned in the modern sense, would absorb the cumulative odors of the household. Fireplace smoke, food smells, residual perfumes, and the faint, musky aroma of human presence would become ingrained in the fabric, creating a rich, layered scent that was unique to each home. Imagine the heavy, luxurious scent of ancient velvet, bearing the aromatic imprints of countless conversations and centuries of life within its fibers. It's a smell that speaks of permanence, of layers of history woven into the very fabric of the home. The candles and oil lamps used for illumination also contributed significantly. Beeswax candles would emit a sweet, honeyed scent as they burned, while tallow candles, made from animal fat, would produce a more acrid, sometimes slightly rancid odor. Oil lamps, burning various oils, would also release their own distinct, often slightly smoky aroma. These smells would be most prominent in the evenings, creating a warm, flickering, and uniquely scented ambience. It's a sensory experience that links light directly to a particular fragrance, one that has largely been lost in the age of electricity. Leather goods beyond books were ubiquitous: shoes, gloves, purses, and decorative items. The rich, earthy, and sometimes slightly pungent aroma of tanned leather would be a constant presence, particularly in dressing rooms and studies. This smell speaks of craftsmanship, of durability, and of a material that ages gracefully, absorbing the patina of time and the lingering sense of its owner. It's a comforting, almost primal smell, one that links you to the natural world, even within the confines of a stately home. Even the humble writing desk had its own subtle scent profile. The wood itself, the ink from quills, the faint metallic tang of the inkwell, and the subtle aroma of sealing wax, often made with scented resins, would all mingle to create a unique aroma of industry and contemplation. Imagine leaning over a letter and catching a faint whiff of this specific combination, a scent that whispers of thoughts committed to paper. It's a very particular smell, one that evokes concentration and the quiet act of creation. Potpourri and dried flowers were commonly used to try and freshen rooms, particularly in drawing rooms and bedrooms. Bowls of dried rose petals, lavender, and other aromatic herbs would release their gentle, often faded, fragrance into the air. While these might seem pleasant, their scent would mingle with the stronger underlying odors of the house, creating a complex blend that was sometimes more intriguing than purely fresh. It's a decorative attempt to influence the olfactory environment, a gentle whisper of artifice in a world of raw smells. One scholarly debate or mystery asks whether the primary purpose of potpourri was indeed to mask odors, or if it was more for aesthetic pleasure and a symbolic representation of wealth and refinement. The very concept of a linen closet would have a different scent. Linens, while aired, were not washed with modern detergents. The faint scent of lye soap, combined with the natural aroma of linen and the subtle lingering human scent, would create a particular soft and slightly musky aroma. It's a smell that speaks of clean but not sterile, of a natural freshness that is distinct from our chemically enhanced standards. It's a gentle reminder that even the simplest acts of domesticity carried their own unique scent signature. Even the subtle emanations from pets, particularly dogs and cats, would contribute. The natural scent of animal fur, perhaps mingled with faint residual outdoor smells or the aroma of their bedding, would be a constant, often comforting, presence in homes where animals were beloved companions. It's a smell that speaks of companionship, of the quiet, furry presence that adds life and warmth to a domestic space. Oh, that's just Fifi, smelling like she just rolled in well. Never mind. So, as you gently retreat from the intimate, detailed world of 18th century French household scents, you're left with a profound sense of how every object, every material, every subtle interaction contributed to the rich, layered, and often deeply personal aromatic signature of a home. It was a world where the unseen was powerfully present, where the nose constantly gathered information, constructing a reality far richer and more nuanced than visual observation alone. And as these quiet, domestic aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the subtle sense of history lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. Having explored the intimate world of 18th century French household objects and their subtle aromas, we now turn our attention to an often overlooked yet incredibly pervasive source of scent: the gardens, both grand and humble, and the surrounding natural environment. While urban centres were undeniably pungent, the countryside offered a different, though equally complex, olfactory experience. You are about to discover how the changing seasons, the flora, and the very earth itself contributed to a powerful and ever-evolving aromatic tapestry. Imagine standing in a formal French garden, perhaps at Versailles on a warm summer's day. The most immediate and striking aroma would be that of flowers: roses, jasmine, lavender, and a myriad of other blooms would release their intense, often heady, perfumes into the air. These wouldn't be the subtle, hybridized scents of modern gardens. These would be the robust, natural fragrances of heirloom varieties, often cultivated for their potency. The air would be thick and sweet, almost cloying in its intensity, a deliberate assault of natural beauty designed to overwhelm the senses. One mainstream historical fact is that formal gardens were designed not just for visual spectacle, but also for their aromatic qualities, with specific flowers chosen for their strong scents. Beyond the cultivated blooms, the scent of damp earth and growing foliage would be a constant, underlying presence. The rich, fertile aroma of soil, particularly after a rain shower, would mingle with the green, slightly bitter scent of leaves and grasses. It's a primal, grounding smell, one that connects you directly to the fundamental cycles of nature. Imagine the subtle variations: the fresh, clean scent of dew on grass in the morning, or the dry, dusty smell of parched earth in late summer. It's a smell that speaks of life growth and the quiet power of the natural world. Then there's the distinct aroma of manure. Even in the most manicured gardens, animal manure was a common and essential fertilizer. While perhaps less offensive than the urban variety due to its dispersal and interaction with soil, its earthy, slightly pungent odor would still be discernible, particularly in certain areas or immediately after application. It's a practical smell, one that speaks of the close relationship between human cultivation and natural cycles, a reminder that even beauty requires sustenance. You might joke, the secret to these magnificent blooms: a little bit of magic and a whole lot of fertilizer. The scent of trees, particularly in larger parks or wooded areas, also contributed. The fresh, resinous aroma of pine, the earthy, slightly sweet smell of decaying leaves in autumn, or the unique, almost spicy scent of certain tree barks would all add to the natural symphony. Imagine walking through a forest and breathing in the ancient, calming aroma of old growth, a smell that speaks of timelessness and the enduring power of nature. It's a very grounding smell, one that connects you to the vast, living landscape beyond the city walls. Water features, common in grand gardens, also held their own scent. The cool, damp aroma of still water in a pond, or the fresh, invigorating scent of a fountain would mingle with the surrounding floral and earthy notes. In less pristine areas, or in stagnant water, there might be a faint, musty, or even slightly swampy odor, a reminder of the dynamic nature of water in an open environment. It's a smell that speaks of tranquility and refreshment, or perhaps of the wilder aspects of nature asserting themselves. The changing seasons would bring their own distinct aromatic shifts. Spring would herald the fresh, green scent of new growth, mingled with the delicate aromas of early blossoms. Summer would be heavy with the heady perfumes of full bloom and the dry, warm scent of sun-baked earth. Autumn would bring the crisp, earthy aroma of decaying leaves, and the first hints of wood smoke from distant hearths. Winter, while perhaps less overtly fragrant, would carry the clean, sharp scent of cold air and damp soil, sometimes mingled with the subtle aroma of evergreen. It's a powerful reminder that the natural world is a constantly evolving tapestry of smells, a perpetual aromatic calendar. One scholarly debate or mystery centers on how much these seasonal shifts truly impacted daily life and mood. Beyond simply marking time for agriculture, even the distant smells of agricultural activity would drift on the wind, particularly in areas bordering the countryside. The sweet, earthy aroma of freshly turned soil, the faint scent of hay from harvested fields, or the unique, sometimes sharp, smell of various crops would all be carried on the breeze, providing a constant link to the rural rhythms of life. It's a smell that speaks of sustenance, of the fundamental connection between humans and the land that feeds them. The presence of wild animals, though often subtle, would also contribute. The faint musky scent of deer in a forest, the earthy aroma of foxes, or the more pronounced smell of domestic farm animals in nearby villages would occasionally drift into the air, adding a wilder, more untamed note to the natural environment. It's a smell that reminds you that you are part of a larger ecosystem, a world teeming with life beyond the human. The scent of rain, particularly after a long dry spell, would be a powerfully cleansing and refreshing aroma. The unique, earthy scent of petrichor, caused by raindrops hitting dry soil, would fill the air, a natural perfume that invigorates the senses and washes away the accumulated dust and older odors. It's a universally beloved smell, one that speaks of renewal, of nature's ability to cleanse and refresh. You might joke that even the rain smelled better back then, because it had so much more to wash away. So, as you gently drift from the fragrant embrace of 18th century French gardens and the wider natural world, you're left with a powerful sense of how intrinsically linked human life was to the rhythms and aromas of the environment. The smells of flowers, earth, water, and the changing seasons formed a profound and ever-present background to existence, shaping perceptions and experiences in ways that are often overlooked in our urbanized, climate-controlled world. And as these natural aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the sweet, earthy sense of nature guide you into a restful, dreamless sleep. As the natural, earthy aromas of 18th century French gardens and the surrounding countryside softly recede, we now enter a fascinating, and often overlooked, aspect of the era's olfactory tapestry, the deliberate use of scent for social signaling, concealment, and even as a form of communication. Beyond mere personal hygiene or pleasantry, fragrance was a sophisticated tool, employed with skill and subtlety to convey messages, assert status, or discreetly mask less desirable realities. You are about to discover how scent became an invisible language in the salons and streets of pre-revolutionary France. Consider the art of wearing perfume. It wasn't just about smelling good. It was about smelling rich. The most exquisite and potent perfumes were incredibly expensive, made from rare botanical essences and animal products like civet and musk. Wearing a heavy, complex fragrance signaled wealth, status, and access to luxury goods. Imagine encountering a lady whose entire aura seemed to be enveloped in a cloud of jasmine and ambergris. It was an announcement of her elevated position. This deliberate use of costly scents created a clear olfactory divide between the aristocracy and the common people. One mainstream historical fact is that Louis XV's court was famously known as the perfumed court due to the daily changing and liberal application of fragrances, sometimes used to mask the less diligent bathing habits of its members. Then there was the strategic use of smaller, personal fragrant items. Pomander's often intricate golden or silver orbs, filled with spices and aromatic resins, were carried by ladies and gentlemen, brought discreetly to the nose when encountering unpleasant odors. These weren't just decorative, they were functional, mini aromatherapy devices. Imagine the subtle click of a silver pomander opening, releasing a burst of cloves and cinnamon as a noble navigated a particularly pungent street. This silent gesture spoke volumes about their sensitivity and their desire to maintain a refined personal space. Scented gloves were another popular item, particularly for ladies. Fine leather gloves were often impregnated with floral essences, so that even a simple hand gesture could release a delicate waft of rose or violet. This was a subtle, elegant way to carry a pleasant aroma, offering a fleeting sensory delight to anyone nearby. It added another layer to the overall personal scent, ensuring that even a handshake or a delicate wave left a fragrant impression. "My, your hands smell delightful," might be a compliment you'd hear. A nod to this refined practice. Even the practice of snuff taking had its aromatic implications. While primarily for stimulation, many snuff blends were scented with various herbs and spices, adding another layer of complex aroma to the user's personal sphere. The subtle, often spicy, scent of tobacco mingled with the chosen additives would waft from the user's nose and hands, a discreet but recognizable signature. It was a social ritual that involved the nose directly, creating a unique micro-environment of scent around the individual. One quirky tidbit is that specific snuff boxes were designed with airtight seals to preserve the delicate aroma of the tobacco and its added fragrances, indicating the value placed on these subtle scents. The use of scented powders, particularly rice powder for the face and hair powder for wigs, also contributed. These powders were often subtly perfumed with floral notes, adding a delicate, ethereal fragrance to the person's immediate vicinity. Imagine the faint, sweet scent of violet powder lingering in the air after a lady had dressed, a final touch to her elaborate toilette. It was a subtle, almost invisible, veil of fragrance that enhanced the overall appearance of refinement. The scent of a letter, subtly perfumed with a personal fragrance, could convey a deeper message than the words alone. A lover might scent their correspondence with a particular perfume, so that the recipient, upon opening it, would immediately be enveloped in the sender's intimate aroma. This added a powerful emotional and personal dimension to communication, a sensory memory that transcended the written word. It was a romantic gesture, an invisible embrace carried through the mail, a way to be physically present even when absent. Historians still argue whether such perfumed letters were genuinely about emotion or just another form of elaborate social etiquette. Perhaps, as with all things human, a blend of both. Even specific rooms in grand houses might be subtly perfumed for different effects. A drawing room might feature heavy, formal floral scents, while a boudoir might have a more intimate, musky aroma. This deliberate environmental scenting helped to define the purpose and mood of different spaces, creating a multi-sensory architecture within the home. It was an early form of interior design, using the unseen power of scent to shape the experience of a space. You might joke, "This is the flirtation room. You can tell by the aggressive rose and civet." The practice of refreshing rooms with fragrant substances, like burning incense or scattering dried herbs, was also a form of environmental scenting. While partly practical for masking odors, it also served to imbue the space with a desired aroma, creating a more pleasant and inviting atmosphere for guests. It was an intentional act of sensory manipulation, a way to present a curated olfactory experience to visitors. The very absence of a strong, personal perfume could also be a form of signaling. In certain intellectual or philosophical circles, a more natural scent, or a very light, almost imperceptible fragrance, might have been favored, signaling a rejection of superficiality and an embrace of authenticity. It's a fascinating inversion where the lack of an overt scent became a statement in itself. a subtle form of quiet rebellion. So, as you gently retreat from the intricate, often unspoken, world of 18th century French scent as communication, you're left with a profound sense of how profoundly integrated fragrance was into the social fabric of the era. It was not merely an adornment but a powerful tool, capable of conveying status, emotion, and subtle messages without a single word being spoken. And as these intriguing, nuanced aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the silent language of scent guide you into a restful, dreamless sleep. One having explored the deliberate social uses of scent in 18th century France, we now shift our focus to the less glamorous, yet fundamentally significant, world of transportation and travel. Beyond the elegant carriages and dusty roads, every journey in this era carried its own distinct set of smells, reflecting the modes of transport, the conditions of the roads, and the inevitable interaction with both human and animal elements. Prepare your senses for the earthy, sometimes challenging, yet undeniably authentic aromas of a world on the move. The most pervasive smell associated with land travel was, without doubt, horse. From the powerful, musky aroma of the animals themselves to the ever-present scent of horse manure on the roads, this was the defining olfactory note of transportation. Imagine the rich, earthy smell of a stable mingling with the sweeter aroma of hay and grain, clinging to the leather harnesses and the very air around the carriages. The constant clip-clop of hooves on cobblestones would be accompanied by a subtle, yet persistent, aromatic trail, a testament to the era's reliance on horsepower. One mainstream historical fact is that the sheer number of horses in urban centers led to massive logistical challenges in waste removal, contributing significantly to the city's overall odor. Carriages and stagecoaches, while offering shelter, also accumulated a unique blend of smells. The interior of a carriage would quickly become infused with the mingled scents of its passengers, their perfumes, their body odors, and the general human presence. Add to this the smell of the leather upholstery, the wooden frame, and the dust and dirt that inevitably seeped in from the outside, and you have a rather specific, enclosed environment. Imagine settling into a long journey and breathing in this concentrated essence of human travel, a blend of excitement and confinement. You might joke, this carriage smells like adventure and three unwashed strangers. The roads themselves, often unpaved and made of compacted earth or rough cobblestones, contributed their own distinct smells. In dry weather, the pervasive scent of dust, sometimes mingled with finely ground manure, would fill the air. After rain, the rich, earthy smell of wet soil, mixed with the acrid tang of mud and standing water, would dominate. These weren't just visual elements. They were active participants in the olfactory landscape, constantly releasing their unique aromas, depending on the weather and the traffic. It's a very grounded, tactile smell, one that connects you directly to the physical journey itself. Then there was the smell of inns and coaching houses, where travelers would stop for refreshment and rest. These establishments, often bustling with people and animals, would have a concentrated aroma of stale food, spilled drinks, horse and human odors, and the lingering smell of fireplace smoke. Imagine stepping into a dimly lit common room and being hit by this warm, dense, and distinctly human-animal cocktail of scents. It's a smell that speaks of temporary respite, of shared journeys, and of the raw realities of public accommodation in an earlier age. Water travel, whether by river barge or coastal ship, also had its own distinct set of smells. The fresh, sometimes briny scent of water itself, mingled with the earthy aroma of damp wood from the vessel, and the faint, specific smell of tar or pitch used to seal the hull. On larger vessels, the smells of cramped living quarters, cooking, and the presence of many people in close proximity would add to the maritime atmosphere. Imagine the rhythmic lapping of water against the hull, accompanied by the subtle, ever-present aroma of the sea and the boat itself. It's a smell that speaks of journeys across water, of connection to the wider world beyond the land, the markets and docks. Where goods arrived by land and sea would be places of intense aromatic concentration. The smells of imported spices, exotic fruits, bundles of textiles, and barrels of various liquids would mingle with the omnipresent scents of the port's salt water, fish, and damp wood. It's a truly global sensory experience, a blend of local and distant aromas, reflecting the vast network of trade and commerce that connected France to the wider world. One quirky tidbit is that merchants would often intentionally open barrels of spices or coffee at the docks, allowing the appealing aroma to draw in customers, an early form of scent marketing. The presence of domestic animals, not just horses, on the roads and in rural areas, also added to the travel sense. The earthy smell of cattle, the distinctive aroma of sheep, or the subtle presence of various farm animals grazing nearby would occasionally drift into the air as you passed through the countryside. These were the smells of agricultural life, a constant reminder of the rural backdrop to urban centers. It's a very natural, wholesome smell, a stark contrast to the more challenging urban effluvium. Even the simple act of walking along a country lane would reveal new smells. The sweet scent of wildflowers along the verges, the green, fresh aroma of hedgerows, and the earthy smell of damp soil after a morning mist would create a peaceful, invigorating olfactory experience. It's a reminder that even the quietest journeys were filled with a rich tapestry of natural scents, unnoticed perhaps, but subtly shaping the experience. So, as you gently retreat from the bustling, sometimes challenging, yet undeniably authentic world of 18th century French travel and transportation, you're left with a profound sense of how every journey was a multi-sensory experience. The smells of horse, dust, damp roads, and the specific aromas of carriages and inns all combined to create a unique aromatic signature for an era reliant on muscle and wind. And as these earthy, sometimes surprising aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the knowledge of a richly scented journey lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. To having journeyed through the olfactory landscape of 18th century French travel, we now turn our attention to the surprisingly intimate and often challenging sensory world of incarceration and public punishment. These were places and events designed not just to confine or punish, but also to make a powerful statement through their stark, often overwhelming, sensory presence. Prepare your senses for the damp, the decay, and the visceral realities of a less forgiving justice system. Imagine the interior of a typical prison cell, or even the infamous Bastille. The overwhelming smell would be one of damp stone, mingled with the stale, musky aroma of unwashed bodies. Add to this the acrid tang of human waste from overflowing chamber pots, and the faint, sweet, sickly smell of lingering illness and poor sanitation. The air would be heavy, stagnant, and oppressive, a constant sensory reminder of confinement and despair. It's a smell that speaks of human degradation, of close quarters under dire circumstances. One mainstream historical fact is that prisons were often breeding grounds for disease, and the pervasive foul odors were a clear indication of the unhygienic conditions. Then there was the smell of fear. While not a distinct chemical aroma, in the way we usually think of it, the physiological responses to extreme stress, increased perspiration. Adrenaline would subtly alter the body odor of those imprisoned, contributing a sharper, more metallic note to the air. This, combined with the general atmosphere of anxiety and suffering, would create a palpable, though perhaps imperceptible to the uninitiated, sensory signature. It's a smell that speaks of raw human emotion, of the fundamental instinct for survival under threat. The public squares where punishments were enacted, the stocks, the pillory, or even the gallows, would also have a very specific, often grim, scent profile. Here, the odors of the urban environment would be intensified by the concentration of onlookers. Imagine the nervous sweat of the crowd, the lingering smells of cheap tobacco, and the acrid tang of fear and anticipation. If corporal punishment was involved, the metallic scent of fresh blood would permeate the air, sharp and visceral, a powerful announcement of suffering. It's a smell that speaks of public spectacle, of justice dispensed in a raw, unvarnished manner. The presence of executioners and their implements would also carry their own subtle scents. The smell of worn leather from their tools, perhaps the faint metallic tang of sharpened blades, would add a chilling note to the scene. These were the smells of official violence, of the instruments of state power designed to instill terror and submission. You might joke, well, that's one way to get people to behave, make justice smell really, really bad. Consider the common sight of beggars and the very poor, who, due to circumstance, might have gone days or weeks without washing. Their personal scent, a blend of unwashed skin, stale clothing, and the lingering aromas of whatever sparse food they could find, would be a constant presence in the lower echelons of society. It's a smell that speaks of poverty, of struggle, and of the harsh realities of life on the margins. It's a deeply human smell, one that evokes empathy and discomfort in equal measure. The scent of specific forms of punishment, even those less common, would leave their own indelible marks. A faint, sweet smell of burning wood from a branding iron, or the sharp, singed aroma of hair from a public shaving, would be momentary but powerful olfactory announcements of disciplinary action. These were direct sensory assaults, designed to mark the individual and send a clear message to observers. Even the simpler acts of official control, like the guarding of gates or the presence of a watchman, would contribute. The smell of worn uniforms, the metallic scent of weaponry, and the lingering aroma of pipe tobacco from board guards would all combine to create a subtle, yet omnipresent, atmosphere of authority and surveillance. It's a smell that speaks of order, of the subtle control exerted over daily life in an urban environment. One scholarly debate or mystery asks whether the sensory impact of public punishments was truly a deterrent, or if it sometimes desensitized the public to violence. It was likely a complex and varied response. The very concept of a dungeon is tied to a specific sensory experience. The cold, dank smell of underground stone, the pervasive aroma of mildew and stagnant air, and the faint, unsettling scent of forgotten lives would all contribute to the chilling atmosphere. It's a smell that evokes isolation, despair, and the lingering presence of those who once suffered within its walls. It's a smell that sends shivers down your spine, even from the safe distance of your imagination. So, as you gently retreat from the stark, often unsettling, world of 18th century French incarceration and public punishment, you're left with a powerful sense of how profoundly scent was intertwined with notions of justice, control, and societal order. These were environments and events designed to overwhelm the senses, to make a powerful, unforgettable statement through their stark, unvarnished aromas. And as these challenging, sometimes disturbing aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the quiet understanding of a different kind of justice lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. 3. Having explored the somber sense of 18th century French justice and confinement, we now pivot to a more academic and intellectual realm. The surprisingly distinct and complex aromas of education, libraries, and the pursuit of knowledge. Forget the sterile, climate-controlled environments of modern institutions. In this era, the very act of learning, and the spaces dedicated to it carried their own rich, layered, and often deeply comforting olfactory signatures. You are about to discover how the pursuit of wisdom truly had a scent of its own. Imagine stepping into a grand library, perhaps in a university or a wealthy private home. The most immediate and pervasive smell would be that of old books. This isn't just one smell. It's a symphony of aromas, the sweet, slightly vanilla-like scent of lignin breaking down in the paper, mingled with the rich, earthy, and sometimes subtly animalistic aroma of leather bindings. Add to this the faint, metallic tang of antique inks and the dry, comforting scent of dust, and you have a unique and deeply evocative fragrance that speaks of centuries of accumulated knowledge. It's a smell that invites contemplation, a silent invitation to lose yourself among the pages. One mainstream historical fact is that books were incredibly valuable and rare, often chained to shelves in public libraries, making their presence and associated scents even more precious. Then there's the scent of the academic environment itself. Classrooms, often heated by fireplaces, would carry the subtle aroma of wood smoke, mingling with the earthy scent of stone or wood floors. The presence of many students in a confined space would contribute a faint, human musk, subtly balanced by the sharp, stimulating scent of chalkboards if used, or the dry, papery smell of countless manuscripts. It's a smell that speaks of concentration, of shared learning, and of the quiet hum of intellectual activity. You might joke, the smell of genius, or perhaps just really old parchment and a lot of teenage angst. The materials of study also had their own distinct aromas. Parchment, made from animal skin, would have a subtle animalistic and slightly earthy scent, distinct from paper. Wax seals, used to authenticate documents and letters, would release a sweet, resinous aroma when heated. The fine powdered charcoal or graphite used for drawings and diagrams would contribute a subtle, dry, and slightly metallic smell. These were the working scents of scholarship, the subtle accompaniments to the creation and preservation of knowledge. The scholarly's personal effects would also contribute. The leather of their satchels, the wood of their writing desks, and the faint, specific scent of lamp oil from their nighttime studies would all combine to create a signature aroma of intellectual pursuit. Imagine a scholar's study imbued with the persistent, calming scent of paper, leather, and quiet industry. It's a smell that evokes dedication, a silent witness to countless hours of reading and writing. Consider the occasional smell of experimentation from early scientific pursuits. In a laboratory or study where rudimentary chemistry or physics might be explored, there could be the faint, sharp tang of distilled spirits, the acrid aroma of certain chemical reactions, or the earthy smell of various minerals. These were the frontier smells of discovery, the often unpleasant but exciting aromas of pushing the boundaries of human understanding. It's a smell that speaks of curiosity, of risk, and of the fundamental human drive to uncover the secrets of the universe. One quirky tidbit is that some alchemists and early chemists were renowned for the strange and sometimes noxious odors that emanated from their workshops, a constant source of both fascination and suspicion among their neighbors. Even the library's dust, inevitable in such environments, had its own subtle, almost sweet scent. This wasn't simply dirt. It was the accumulated detritus of centuries, a fine powder composed of decaying paper, fabric fibers, and microscopic organic matter, all carrying the faint, comforting aroma of age. It's a smell that speaks of permanence, of time passing, and of the quiet, patient accumulation of history. The presence of burning candles or oil lamps during evening study sessions would add a warm, smoky, and sometimes slightly waxy scent to the air. This fragrance, combined with the other library smells, would create a unique ambience, one that spoke of quiet concentration and the pursuit of knowledge late into the night. It's a smell that evokes a sense of timelessness, of scholars laboring by flickering light through the ages. The occasional use of fumigants or pest deterrents within libraries to protect valuable manuscripts from insects would also add to the atmospheric blend. While often less overtly aromatic than perfumes, these substances would contribute a subtle, sometimes chemical or herbal, background note. It's a hidden smell, a reminder of the constant battle to preserve knowledge against the ravages of time and nature. Historians still argue about the precise methods used for pest control in ancient libraries and the lasting impact of those methods on the books themselves. So, as you gently retreat from the quiet, yet profoundly scented, world of 18th century French education and libraries, you're left with a powerful sense of how intimately intertwined the pursuit of knowledge was with its physical environment. Every book, every study, every quiet moment of contemplation had its own subtle, unique aroma, creating an invisible landscape of learning that enriched the intellectual journey. And as these scholarly aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the comforting scent of ancient wisdom lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. For having explored the scholarly sense of 18th century French libraries, we now embark on a delightful, yet often complex, sensory journey through the world of leisure, entertainment, and the various diversions that punctuated daily life. Beyond the visual spectacles and lively sounds, these moments of relaxation and amusement carried their own distinct and often intriguing olfactory signatures, reflecting the passions, pleasures, and occasional indulgences of the era. Prepare your senses for the aromas of card tables, theatre stages, and the gentle joys of social gathering. Imagine stepping into a bustling coffee house, a popular hub for social and intellectual exchange. The air would be thick with the rich, roasted aroma of coffee beans, mingled with the sweet, sometimes smoky, scent of tobacco from pipes and snuff. Add to this the subtle, earthy aroma of brewing tea, and the faint, sweet tang of sugar from various confections. It's a warm, stimulating, and distinctly urban blend of aromas, one that speaks of lively conversation, intellectual debate, and casual camaraderie. One mainstream historical fact is that coffee houses were vital centers for news and political discussion, often buzzing with energetic conversation and the constant hum of social interaction, all against this aromatic backdrop. Then there's the theatre, a place of grand illusions and heightened emotions. The stage itself would have a unique smell, the dry, dusty aroma of old curtains, the faint scent of timber from the sets, and the lingering, almost metallic tang of stage paint and grease paint from the actors. The audience, packed into close quarters, would contribute their own human perfume, a blend of body odors and personal fragrances, intensified by the excitement of the performance. Imagine the combined aroma of anticipation, drama, and human presence, all illuminated by the flickering, smoky light of numerous candles. It's a sensory experience designed to immerse you completely, drawing you into the illusion. You might joke the acting was superb, but the smell truly brought the house down. Card games, a popular pastime in drawing rooms and gaming houses, also had their subtle olfactory cues. The faint, papery smell of playing cards, perhaps tinged with the scent of human hands, and the occasional spilled drink, would mingle with the rich aroma of polished wood from the card tables. If the game was particularly intense, the nervous scent of human perspiration might also add a subtle, sharp note. It's a smell that speaks of friendly competition, of strategic thinking, and of the quiet, focused energy of a game in progress. Gardens, as we've touched upon, were places of leisure, but also of specific leisure-related scents. Picnics might involve the aromas of fresh bread, cheese, and wine, mingling with the natural scents of the outdoors. Outdoor dances or promenades would combine the natural floral perfumes with the lighter, more ephemeral scents of dancing bodies and festive clothing. It's a harmonious blend of human celebration and natural beauty, a truly idyllic sensory experience. The scent of specific recreational pursuits would also be present. For gentlemen engaged in hunting, there would be the earthy, musky smell of the outdoors, combined with the metallic tang of gunpowder from their firearms, and the faint, specific aroma of leather from their equipment. It's a smell that speaks of exertion, of sport, and of a direct connection to the wilder aspects of nature. The consumption of various sweet treats and confections, particularly at social gatherings, would add delightful aromas. The sweet, sugary scent of pastries, the rich aroma of chocolate, a luxury item, and the fruity fragrance of various preserves would fill the air, creating a tempting and indulgent atmosphere. These are the smells of pure pleasure, of moments of delightful sensory escape. One scholarly debate or mystery asks whether the increasing availability of sweet scents and tastes influenced the broader aesthetic and cultural sensibilities of the era, shifting preferences towards greater refinement. Even the simple act of reading a novel for pleasure, perhaps by candlelight, would have its own sensory backdrop. The familiar aroma of old paper and leather, combined with the warm, smoky scent of the candle, would create a comforting and intimate atmosphere conducive to storytelling. It's a smell that speaks of quiet contemplation, of escaping into imagined worlds, and of the gentle pleasures of solitary enjoyment. The barber shop, a social hub for men, would have a distinct, clean and masculine scent. The sharp, invigorating aroma of shaving soap, the faint metallic tang of razors, and the fresh, herbal scent of various tonics and pomades would fill the air. It's a smell that speaks of personal grooming, of social interaction, and of the ritualistic preparation for public life. You might joke, looks like someone just got barber fresh, and now the whole street knows it. So, as you gently retreat from the vibrant, often surprising, world of 18th century French leisure and entertainment, you're left with a powerful sense of how richly scented these moments of relaxation and amusement truly were. Every diversion, every social gathering, every quiet pleasure had its own unique aromatic signature, contributing to a full and multifaceted sensory experience of life in that era. And as these delightful aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the pleasant sense of leisure guide you into a restful, dreamless sleep. 5. With the fragrant world of 18th century French leisure now a soft echo in your mind, we turn our attention to the more mundane, yet fundamentally important, aspects of domestic life and household management. Beyond the grand salons and bustling streets, the daily routines of cooking, cleaning, and maintaining a home generated their own distinct and often surprisingly complex set of aromas, reflecting the technology, resources, and cultural practices of the time. Prepare your senses for the earthy, sometimes smoky, and undeniably human sense of a busy household. Imagine the heart of any home, the kitchen. Even without modern appliances, it was a hub of activity and a source of constant aroma. The pervasive smell of wood smoke from the open hearth or stove would cling to the walls and ceiling, mingling with the rich, savory aromas of simmering stews, roasting meats, and baking bread. The sharp tang of fresh vegetables being chopped, the earthy scent of root cellars, and the occasional, pungent whiff of fermenting foods or spilled milk would all contribute to a powerful, layered culinary fragrance. It's a smell that speaks of sustenance, of warmth, and of the tireless labor involved in feeding a household. One mainstream historical fact is that kitchens, even in grand homes, were often separate or poorly ventilated, leading to lingering food odors throughout the house. Then there was the process of laundry. Without modern washing machines or detergents, the act of cleaning clothes was a laborious, often infrequent affair. The smell of lye soap, a strong, somewhat caustic, and distinctly alkaline aroma, would permeate the air during washing. Wet clothes, hung to dry, would release the scent of damp fabric, mingling with the natural aroma of the fibers and any residual dirt. Imagine the faint, earthy smell of linen drying in the sun. A clean but not sterile scent, far removed from the artificially perfumed freshness you're accustomed to. You might joke, the smell of clean laundry, eventually. The presence of domestic animals, even as humble pest controllers, would add their subtle, yet constant, aroma. The faint, musky scent of a cat, or the earthier smell of a dog curled by the fire, would contribute to the overall household ambience. These were comforting, familiar smells for the inhabitants, a quiet reminder of their animal companions. It's a smell that speaks of warmth, of companionship, and of the simple joy of living with creatures great and small. Lighting a home in the evenings contributed its own distinct scents. Beeswax candles used in wealthier homes would emit a sweet, honeyed aroma as they slowly burned. Tallow candles, more common among the less affluent, would produce a more acrid, sometimes slightly rancid, smell. Oil lamps, while providing brighter light, would also release the distinct, slightly smoky aroma of their fuel. These lighting-related smells would be most pronounced after dusk, creating a warm, flickering, and uniquely scented evening atmosphere. It's a sensory experience that linked light directly to a particular fragrance, one that is largely absent in our electrically lit world. The management of waste, as touched upon, was a constant challenge. Chamber pots, emptied into gardens or communal cesspits, would contribute their acrid tang, particularly in bedrooms and service areas. The faint, underlying smell of decomposition from food scraps and general refuse, even in carefully managed homes, would be an unavoidable reality. It's a smell that speaks of a different understanding of public health and of the constant, unglamorous work of keeping a home functional in a world without modern sanitation. One quirky tidbit is that housekeepers would often scatter fragrant herbs or flowers in strategic locations, like near doorways or windows, to subtly combat persistent unpleasant odors. The use of herbs and spices, not just for cooking, but also for their aromatic properties, was widespread. Bundles of dried lavender might hang in closets, emitting a gentle, calming scent. Rosemary or thyme might be used to refresh surfaces, leaving a faint, herbaceous aroma. These natural essences were integral to creating a pleasant, or at least tolerable, olfactory environment within the home. It's a smell that speaks of ingenuity, of resourcefulness, and of a direct connection to the bounty of the natural world. Even the materials of the house itself contributed. The dry, comforting aroma of old wood from beams and floors, the earthy smell of plaster and stone, and the faint, musty scent of ancient foundations would all combine to create a unique, inherent fragrance for each individual dwelling. It's a smell that speaks of permanence, of history, and of the quiet passage of time within the walls of a beloved home. Historians still argue about the precise impact of these accumulated domestic odors on the daily lives and psychological states of the inhabitants. Were they simply background noise, or did they subtly shape the emotional texture of home life? The occasional repair or renovation would bring new smells: the fresh, resinous scent of newly cut timber, the sharp, pungent aroma of fresh paint, often made with natural pigments and oils, or the earthy smell of freshly mixed mortar. These were the fleeting, exciting smells of change and improvement, brief interruptions to the more constant, underlying household aromas. It's a smell that speaks of upkeep, of the ongoing effort to maintain a dwelling against the ravages of time. So, as you gently retreat from the busy, often surprisingly fragrant, world of 18th century French domestic life and household management, you're left with a powerful sense of how deeply intertwined human existence was with the practicalities and routines of daily living. Every task, every material, Every subtle interaction contributed to a rich, layered, and often deeply comforting aromatic signature for the home. And as these busy, comforting aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the reassuring sense of a lived-in home lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. 6. With the comforting, busy aromas of 18th century French domestic life, now a gentle memory. We turn our attention to an often unseen, but deeply impactful aspect of the era's sensory landscape, the smells associated with craftsmanship, artistry, and the tools of creation. Beyond the finished products, the very act of making, carving, painting, and crafting imbued workshops and studios with a unique and often fascinating olfactory signature. Prepare your senses for the raw materials, the subtle chemical reactions, and the persistent aromas of dedicated labor. Imagine stepping into a painter's studio. The air would be thick with the sharp, distinctive smell of linseed oil, used as a binder for pigments, mingling with the earthy, mineral scent of various ground pigments. The faint, sweet aroma of turpentine, used as a solvent, would add another volatile note. The wood of easels and canvases would contribute its subtle, comforting scent, creating a truly artistic bouquet. It's a smell that speaks of creation, of vibrant colors slowly coming to life, and of the patient, focused work of the artist. One mainstream historical fact is that many artists ground their own pigments, leading to a much stronger and more varied array of raw material smells in their studios. Then there's the workshop of a cabinet maker or carpenter. Here, the pervasive scent of freshly cut wood, varying subtly depending on the type of timber, would dominate. The sweet, resinous aroma of pine, the deeper, richer scent of oak, or the more exotic fragrance of imported mahogany would fill the air. Add to this the faint, earthy smell of sawdust, the sharp tang of wood glue, often animal-based, and the subtle waxy scent of beeswax polish. And you have a truly grounding and comforting aroma of skilled labor. It's a smell that speaks of precision, of natural materials transformed by human hands, and of the quiet dedication to craftsmanship. You might joke, this place smells like trees that decided to become furniture. Ambitious? The world of textiles, from weaving looms to tailors' shops, also had its distinct aromas. The earthy, sometimes slightly lanolin-rich scent of raw wool, the dry, papery aroma of cotton or linen fibers, and the subtle, specific smell of various natural dyes would permeate the air. In a tailor's shop, the faint metallic tang of needles, the warm scent of pressing irons, and the unique, often faint, aroma of specific fabrics would all contribute to the professional atmosphere. It's a smell that speaks of meticulous work, of threads becoming garments, and of the transformation of raw materials into elegant attire. Consider the jeweler's or goldsmith's workshop. While perhaps less overtly aromatic than others, there would still be subtle, specific scents. The faint, metallic tang of various precious metals, the sharp, clean smell of polishing compounds, and the subtle, sometimes acrid, aroma of the small amounts of chemicals used for soldering or cleaning would all be present. It's a smell that speaks of precision, of minute detail, and of the transformation of raw elements into glittering works of art. The bookbender's shop would be a symphony of distinct smells, the rich, animalistic aroma of new leather, the sweet and sour scent of aging paper, and the subtle, gluey smell of binding agents. Add to this the faint, metallic tang of tools and the occasional whiff of gold leaf, and you have a unique aroma of literary craftsmanship. It's a smell that speaks of preservation, of stories bound for eternity, and of the quiet dedication to the physical manifestation of knowledge. One quirky tidbit is that some bookbinders would discreetly scent the leather of their finest bindings with specific essential oils to add to their luxurious appeal. A hidden aromatic flourish. Even the workshops of instrument makers, from violins to harpsichords, would have their own unique scents. The delicate, resinous aroma of specific woods chosen for their acoustic properties, the faint tang of glues and varnishes, and the subtle metallic scent of strings and mechanical parts would all combine to create an intricate and harmonious aroma. It's a smell that speaks of sound, of music waiting to be born, and of the precise crafting of objects that bring beauty into the world. The glassmaker's studio with its roaring furnaces would certainly have a powerful dry heat, but also a specific, subtle scent. The earthy, mineral aroma of sand and silica, combined with the occasional acrid tang of fluxes and the faint, smoky smell of the burning fuel, would create a unique, elemental aroma. It's a smell that speaks of transformation, of raw materials becoming delicate forms, and of the ancient art of fire and glass. Historians still argue about the precise impact of these industrial crafts' scents on the health of the artisans, as many of the materials and processes involved dangerous fumes, making the smell of the workshop often synonymous with risk. So, as you gently retreat from the vibrant, often surprising, world of 18th century French craftsmanship and artistry, you're left with a powerful sense of how deeply interwoven the act of creation was with its sensory environment. Every tool, every material, every quiet moment of focused labor left its own unique aromatic signature, contributing to a rich, layered, and often deeply inspiring understanding of human ingenuity. And as these specific, creative aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the inspiring sense of human creation lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. 7. With the inspiring aromas of 18th century French craftsmanship, now a gentle whisper, we turn our attention to the less tangible, yet powerfully evocative, sense of belief, superstition, and the sacred. Beyond the grand cathedrals and solemn rituals, the spiritual life of the era, deeply intertwined with daily existence, carried its own unique and often profound olfactory signatures, reflecting ancient practices, fervent prayers, and the constant human yearning for meaning. Prepare your senses for the aromas of incense, wax, and the subtle presence of faith. Imagine stepping into a grand cathedral during a service. The most immediate and pervasive smell would be that of incense. Frankincense, myrrh, and other resins, burning slowly in censers, would release a rich, sweet, and profoundly spiritual aroma that permeated the vast space, clinging to the ancient stone and the very air. This wasn't just a pleasant smell. It was an integral part of the ritual, believed to purify the space, carry prayers to heaven, and invoke the divine presence. It's a smell that speaks of reverence, of timeless tradition, and of the collective act of worship. One mainstream historical fact is that incense has been used in religious ceremonies for millennia across many cultures, for its symbolic and sensory impact. Then there's the pervasive aroma of beeswax candles. Thousands of candles burning constantly in churches, chapels, and private altars would emit a warm, honeyed scent. This gentle, sweet aroma, mingled with the faint, smoky tang of extinguished wicks, would create a soothing and contemplative atmosphere. The smell of burning wax symbolized light, prayer, and the devotion of countless individuals. It's a smell that speaks of hope, of quiet dedication, and of the flickering presence of faith in a world often shrouded in darkness. You might joke, if faith has a smell, it's definitely beeswax and a touch of ancient dust. The sacred relics and venerated objects within churches would also have their own subtle, accumulated scents. The dry, musty aroma of ancient cloth, the faint scent of polished wood or metal, and the lingering, almost imperceptible aroma of countless hands touching and revering them would create a unique and deeply spiritual fragrance. These were the smells of devotion, of continuity, and of a tangible connection to the sacred past. It's a smell that whispers stories of miracles and prayers, of a history touched by the divine, consider the role of various herbs and botanicals in folk beliefs and superstitions. Certain plants were believed to ward off evil spirits, bring good luck, or heal ailments. The strong, pungent aroma of rue, the fresh scent of rosemary, or the calming aroma of lavender might be found in homes, tucked into clothing, or burned as protective measures. These were the working smells of everyday belief, a tangible link between the natural world and the unseen forces that governed human fate. It's a smell that speaks of comfort in uncertainty, of ancient wisdom, and of the human desire to influence destiny. One quirky tidbit is that some people carried nosegays of specific herbs not just for pleasant smell, but also for their supposed protective qualities against disease or ill fortune. The lingering scent of holy water, even subtly, contributed to the atmosphere of sacred spaces. The cool, clean aroma of water, perhaps mingled with a faint, metallic tang from the font, or the subtle essence of any added sanctified oils, would create a unique and purifying fragrance. It's a smell that speaks of cleansing, of blessing, and of the tangible presence of the sacred in daily life. Even the very walls of ancient churches and cathedrals would hold an accumulated scent of centuries of worship. The damp, earthy aroma of old stone, the faint, musty smell of ancient plaster, and the lingering presence of incense and human devotion would create a profound, almost timeless, olfactory signature. It's a smell that speaks of permanence, of countless prayers echoing through the ages, and of a deep, unbroken connection to the past. Historians still debate the extent to which sensory experiences, particularly smell, contributed to the emotional power and efficacy of religious rituals in pre-modern societies. It's likely that a multi-sensory approach profoundly shaped the spiritual experience. The scent of consecrated bread and wine during communion would also be a subtle but profound part of religious experience. The earthy, yeasty aroma of the bread and the sweet, fermented scent of the wine would contribute to the sensory richness of the sacrament, engaging the senses in the act of faith. It's a smell that speaks of communion, of shared belief, and of the simple yet profound rituals that bind communities. The faint, sweet smell of floral offerings left at altars or statues would mingle with the stronger, more ancient scents of the church, adding a delicate, natural counterpoint. These were the smells of personal devotion, of individual acts of love and veneration, a tender, fragrant layer over the grand spiritual tapestry. It's a smell that speaks of humility, of hope, and of the quiet beauty of personal faith. So, as you gently retreat from the ethereal, yet profoundly scented, world of 18th century French belief and sacred practice, you're left with a powerful sense of how intrinsically intertwined the spiritual realm was with its physical manifestations. Every ritual, every prayer, every act of devotion had its own unique aromatic signature, contributing to a rich, layered, and often deeply moving understanding of faith. And as these sacred aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the calming sense of ancient faith lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. Ate with the sacred aromas of 18th century French belief, now a comforting memory, we pivot to the dynamic and often tense world of politics, protest, and social upheaval. Beyond the grand pronouncements and revolutionary cries, these moments of change and conflict carried their own distinct and often powerful olfactory signatures, reflecting the passions of the crowd, the smell of gunpowder, and the inevitable effluvium of human drama. Prepare your senses for the acrid tang of rebellion, the pervasive scent of fear, and the raw, unforgettable aromas of a society on the cusp of transformation. Imagine a crowded public square during a political demonstration or a heated debate. The air would be thick with the concentrated smell of human presence, the musky aroma of many bodies pressed together, intensified by excitement. anger, or fear. Add to this the sharp tang of nervous sweat, the earthy smell of unwashed clothes, and the lingering scent of stale breath. It's a raw, visceral, and intensely human blend of aromas, one that speaks of collective emotion and shared purpose. One mainstream historical fact is that public gatherings for political purposes were common, and the sheer density of people meant that personal odors were amplified significantly. Then there's the unmistakable scent of gunpowder. As tensions escalated and protests sometimes turned violent, the acrid, metallic smell of discharged firearms would fill the air. This sharp, biting aroma, often mingled with the faint, smoky tang of burning fuses or flints, would be an instant signal of conflict and danger. It's a smell that speaks of violence, of confrontation, and of the irreversible moments when words gave way to force. Imagine the sudden, shocking blast of gunpowder, followed by its lingering, chemical scent, a stark reminder of the fragile peace. You might joke, the smell of freedom, or possibly just a very bad day for laundry. The smell of fear, while perhaps not a distinct chemical compound, is profoundly real in a psychological sense. In moments of panic or intense anxiety, the body releases specific physiological responses that alter its scent, often creating a sharper, more metallic, or even slightly sour aroma. In a crowd facing uncertainty or danger, this collective scent of fear would be a powerful, unspoken message, permeating the very air. It's a smell that speaks of primal instinct, of vulnerability, and of the shared human experience of terror. Consider the aftermath of conflict, even minor skirmishes. The lingering metallic scent of dried blood on the cobblestones, the acrid aroma of burnt debris, and the faint, sweet, sickly smell of lingering illness or injury would create a grim and sobering olfactory landscape. These were the smells of consequence, of the raw impact of human conflict on the urban environment. It's a smell that speaks of suffering, of loss, and of the quiet devastation that follows moments of upheaval. The presence of military forces, whether for crowd control or active engagement, would also bring their own distinct aromas. The worn leather of their boots and equipment, the metallic tang of weaponry, and the disciplined, but still human, scent of many bodies in uniform would contribute to a formal, sometimes intimidating atmosphere. It's a smell that speaks of order, of discipline, and of the often unseen presence of coercive power. One quirky tidbit is that military uniforms, rarely washed, would acquire a very distinct and powerful scent over time, a blend of sweat, leather, and gunpowder, becoming almost a signature of the soldier's presence. The smells associated with imprisonment and confinement, as previously discussed, would also be intertwined with political dissent. The damp, musty aroma of prison cells, the faint tang of unwashed bodies, and the underlying smell of despair would be the sensory backdrop for those who challenged the established order. It's a smell that speaks of defiance, of resilience, and of the personal cost of political conviction. The general chaos and disruption of protests would also lead to a temporary increase in unpleasant street odors. Overturned carts, scattered refuse, and the general breakdown of routine waste management would mean a sharper, more concentrated presence of urban effluvium. It's a smell that speaks of disorder, of the temporary suspension of normal civic function, and of the raw realities of urban life when systems break down. Even the symbols of protest, like banners or pamphlets, would have their own subtle scents. The papery aroma of freshly printed tracts, the faint metallic tang of printing ink, and the general smell of human hands would all contribute to the sensory atmosphere of revolutionary fervor. It's a smell that speaks of ideas, of words taking flight, and of the powerful, yet intangible, force of collective will. Historians still debate the extent to which the sensory chaos of revolutionary periods influenced psychological states and collective behavior, suggesting that the overwhelming sights, sounds, and smells contributed to a heightened state of emotional arousal. So, As you gently retreat from the tumultuous, often unsettling, world of 18th century French politics and protest, you're left with a powerful sense of how profoundly scent was intertwined with moments of profound social change. Every gathering, every confrontation, every act of defiance had its own unique aromatic signature, contributing to a raw, layered, and often deeply emotional understanding of human history. And as these challenging, yet vital, aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the quiet understanding of a different kind of history lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. 9. With the tumultuous, revolutionary sense of 18th century French politics now a distant echo, we now turn our attention to a more subtle, yet equally pervasive, aspect of the era's sensory landscape: the aromas of trade, commerce, and the far-reaching influence of global exchange. Beyond the simple goods themselves, the marketplaces, docks, and merchant houses were infused with a fascinating array of scents, reflecting the distant origins of products, the methods of transport, and the sheer volume of goods moving through the economic heart of France. Prepare your senses for the exotic spices, the raw materials, and the comforting, sometimes challenging, aromas of an interconnected world. Imagine stepping into a bustling port, like those along the Seine or on the Atlantic coast. The air would be thick with a complex blend of aromas: the briny tang of salt water, the earthy smell of damp timber from ships, and the rich, tarry scent of pitch used to seal hulls. Mingling with these foundational notes would be the exotic perfumes of newly arrived spices, the sharp bite of pepper, the sweet warmth of cinnamon, the earthy complexity of cloves. You might also catch the rich aroma of coffee beans, the sweet scent of sugar, or the distinctive smell of tobacco from distant colonies. It's a truly global olfactory experience, a testament to the vast network of trade that connected France to the wider world. One mainstream historical fact is that colonial trade, particularly in sugar, coffee, and spices, dramatically altered the diets and sensory experiences of Europeans. Then there's the merchant's warehouse, or a bustling market stall. Here, the individual aromas of various goods would become more concentrated. The dry, papery smell of stacked textiles, the woody scent of furniture from distant lands, and the faint, animalistic aroma of imported furs would all contribute to the specific fragrance of commerce. Imagine the scent of barrels of wine or spirits, slowly aging and releasing their fermented aroma into the air, or the earthy smell of sacks of grain. It's a smell that speaks of accumulation, of value, and of the quiet hum of economic activity. You might joke, this market smells like money, and a whole lot of really exotic dust. The various guilds and artisan quarters, while producing goods, also consumed raw materials, each with its own scent. The faint, metallic tang of iron from a blacksmith's forge, the earthy smell of clay from a potter's workshop, or the sharp, chemical aroma of dyes from a textile dyer. These were the working scents of industry, constantly being bought, sold, and transformed. It's a smell that speaks of transformation, of raw materials becoming finished products, and of the intricate web of production and consumption. Consider the role of food products in trade. The pungent aroma of cheeses, often aged and transported for long distances, would contribute a distinct, sometimes challenging note. The sweet, often slightly fermented, smell of fruits and vegetables, some locally grown, others imported, would add their refreshing, yet sometimes overripe, fragrance to the marketplaces. It's a smell that speaks of sustenance, of diverse agricultural bounty, and of the fundamental human need for food. One quirky tidbit is that specific regions became famous not just for their products, but for the unique aroma of those products, a kind of pre-modern appellation system based on scent. The subtle aromas of packaging materials also contributed. The dry, woody scent of wooden crates, the earthy smell of straw used for padding, and the faint, sometimes musty, aroma of burlap sacks would all be present. These were the humble, background smells of transport and storage, often unnoticed but constantly contributing to the overall olfactory environment of trade. It's a smell that speaks of logistics, of protection, and of the journey of goods from their point of origin to their destination. The presence of animals, particularly horses, used for transport of goods, would also contribute their familiar, earthy manure smell to the commercial districts. This was an unavoidable reality of pre-mechanized trade, a constant reminder of the physical effort involved in moving goods from one place to another. It's a smell that speaks of labor, of the slow, steady pace of commerce in an earlier era. Even the less glamorous aspects of trade, like the sale of animal skins or rendered fats, would contribute powerful, sometimes unpleasant odors. The distinct animalistic aroma of raw hides, or the rich, sometimes slightly rancid, smell of rendered tallow would permeate specific market areas. These were the smells of essential raw materials, sometimes challenging but vital to various industries. Historians still argue about the precise environmental impact of these concentrated trade smells on urban populations, and whether specific regulations were established to mitigate their pervasive nature. The constant movement of people within these commercial hubs would also contribute. The mingled sense of merchants, laborers, and customers, combined with the general urban miasma, would create a dynamic, ever-changing human backdrop to the specific aromas of the goods. It's a smell that speaks of interaction, of negotiation, and of the lively, bustling energy of economic exchange. So, as you gently retreat from the vibrant, often complex, world of 18th century French trade and commerce, you're left with a powerful sense of how profoundly scent was intertwined with the global economy of the era. Every product, every transaction, every movement of goods had its own unique aromatic signature, contributing to a rich, layered, and often deeply fascinating understanding of interconnectedness. And as these diverse, worldly aromas softly fade, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness, a tranquil space where the echoes of the past softly dissipate, leaving you only with the comfortable embrace of the present. Let the intriguing sense of global exchange lull you into a restful, dreamless sleep. So as the intricate, global aromas of 18th century French trade now gently fade into the background, we arrive at the final destination of our olfactory journey, the lasting impressions of scent on memory, identity, and the very fabric of historical perception. Beyond the immediate sensory experience, the smells of this era left an indelible mark on the consciousness of its inhabitants, shaping their understanding of the world, distinguishing places and people, and forming an invisible tapestry of shared experience. You are about to discover how these pervasive aromas became intertwined with individual and collective memory, creating a unique historical signature that whispers to us across the centuries. Imagine the powerful role of nostalgic scents. For someone in 18th century France, the sweet aroma of baking bread might not just signify a bakery. It could evoke childhood memories of warmth and comfort. The musky scent of a particular perfume might instantly transport them back to a specific social gathering, a whispered secret, or a cherished encounter. These weren't just pleasant smells, they were direct conduits to memory, triggering vivid recollections and emotional responses in a way that visual or auditory cues sometimes could not. It's a profound connection between the present moment and a deeply personal past. One mainstream historical fact is that memory, particularly sensory memory, played a far more significant role in information recall and social bonding in an era before widespread literacy and mass media. Then there's the way distinct place-specific scents shaped identity. A Parisian, accustomed to the city's unique blend of human, animal, and industrial smells, would instantly recognize the cleaner, earthy aroma of the countryside. Conversely, A farmer visiting the city would be overwhelmed by its concentrated urban effluvium. These distinct olfactory landscapes defined their environments and subtly shaped their sense of belonging and identity. It's a subconscious mapping of the world, etched not on a map, but in the pathways of the nose and brain. You might joke, you can take the Frenchman out of Paris, but you can't take the smell of Paris out of the Frenchman or off his clothes. The lingering sense of certain historical events would become deeply etched in the collective memory. The acrid tang of gunpowder from a significant battle or riot, the sweet sickly smell of widespread illness from an epidemic, or the comforting aroma of a shared feast during a celebration. These powerful, often traumatic or celebratory, smells would be recalled years, even decades later, serving as a visceral reminder of those moments. They become part of the narrative of history, felt rather than just heard or read. Historians still argue about the extent to which these sensory memories influenced political movements and social narratives, suggesting that the visceral impact of shared smells could galvanize or traumatize populations. Consider the role of scent in personal recognition. In a world where personal hygiene was less standardized, the unique blend of a person's natural body odor, their chosen perfume, and the absorbed scents from their environment would create a very distinct individual aroma. People might recognize friends or family not just by sight or voice, but by their specific scent, a deeply intimate and unconscious form of identification. It's a profound reminder of the close physical proximity and sensory intimacy that defined relationships in that era. One quirky tidbit is that lovers would sometimes exchange small personal items, like a lock of hair or a handkerchief, imbued with their natural scent as a potent reminder of their presence. Even the subtle changes in the weather or time of day would be marked by specific aromas, subtly guiding daily rhythms. The clean, sharp scent of morning dew, the warm, earthy aroma of sun-baked cobblestones at midday, or the gentle, smoky scent of fireplaces as evening descended. These were natural aromatic clocks, marking the passage of time without the need for watches or bells. It's a fundamental connection to the rhythms of nature, experienced through the nose. The absence of a particular smell could also be powerfully significant. The sudden disappearance of the familiar aroma of horse manure from a street during a period of revolution, or the unexpected freshness in a room, usually filled with stale air, could signal profound change or unusual circumstances. Silence, for the nose, can be just as potent as sound. It's a fascinating insight into how our senses interpret deviations from the norm, constantly seeking patterns and meaning. So, as we gently conclude this expansive journey through the olfactory landscape of 18th century France, you're left with a profound appreciation for how integral smell was to understanding and experiencing that world. It wasn't merely a background detail, it was a powerful, pervasive force that shaped daily life, informed social interactions, triggered memories, and subtly yet undeniably contributed to the very identity of an era. The smells of 18th century France, in all their complexity and variety, whisper across the centuries, offering a rich, visceral glimpse into a world both alien and deeply human. And with that final thought, as the last curious aroma of a bygone era softly dissipates, allow your mind to drift into a peaceful emptiness. Feel the comforting stillness of your own space, the gentle hum of your surroundings, and the soft embrace of your bed. The journey through history is complete, but the understanding you've gained, the curious sensations you've experienced, will linger like a pleasant dream. Let the quiet contemplation of a world that smelled strangely different lull you into a deep, peaceful, and utterly refreshing sleep. Good night.